Hello, everyone. Hello. Hi. I'm Trooper SJP, and this is the Academic Foxhole. And, my earphones are, uh, odd. They're giving me. There we go. Hey, everybody. How are you? How's it going? Hi. This is, it's Friday, and this is our, stream where I'm working on Fate preparation for this French Resistance game that I'm running, which is a French Resistance game. And today we're going to talk about faction design. I'm going to sort of think about this and think about what kind of faction rules I want and how I want this to work, what kind of skills I want them to have. And I've been doing quite a bit of research, and I just found a bunch of new things right before I started to stream. I was like, let me do another search of the Fate Codex and see if I can just find some more things. And I did. I did find new things, which is both good and also, will make my life a little bit more difficult. I am going to have to do a bunch of stuff. Like, I'm gonna have to do a bunch of thinking, I think, in terms of what do I want to do with this game. And there are a bunch of things that I want to think about. And so today's session is going to be me working through some of this faction design stuff. And it would be really great if, after I've run this campaign, which I hope to start in February or March at the latest, March, April, May, June, because that'll get us done in June, but February would be great. That if it would be really cool that if I'm able to polish this up in a way that I think is really good, that I'll be able to, maybe do something with this. So where are we at? So I've been doing a lot of research on faction rules. And you can't see what I'm looking at, but I'm looking at the Fate SRD, and I was looking at a couple of things, right? So one of the things I was thinking of is I want to create the faction as a character. That's one of the whole points of me using Fate Core in the first place, is that the bronze rule says that you can do that, so I wanted to do that. And with that in mind, I was like, okay, so let's just think about how do we make these characters? What are they going to be like? And I thought, all right, we'll make them a character. They'll have, 1 fair skill, 2 average skills. They'll have a refresh of 2, although maybe that should be 1 free stunt, probably 2. I'll think about it. And then some stress boxes, some aspects. And I thought about this, and I have been going back and forth about what those stress boxes are. And I have decided that I know what I want them to be. I would like the stress boxes to be, you know what? I want to pull up one more thing while we're here. Here we go. Let's see, where are we at? Okay, so I want to try to figure out, there are a couple of things, and I was just looking at a new thing that really changed my way of thinking about all of this altogether. So this is, some rethinking might happen, but the stress boxes, this is going to cause a bit of a trickiness. So I want one to be notoriety, which will represent how much people are looking at you, it's like your reputation, but also it's like a mixture of your reputation and how much heat you have, right? So if you are very loud, you'll sort of take hits on your notoriety. If you are you do a lot of bad things, that'll hit, you hurt civilians, that'll hit your notoriety. If the Nazis are coming after you, that'll hit your notoriety. So notoriety is your reputation, but also how much heat you have. And I'm trying to think about stress boxes that will be useful for multiple types of factions, so that Nazis could also have this, as well as the resistance. Maybe also the police could have this. Maybe also, different thinking, different organizations. And then personnel, which will take care of your human resources, which would be the size of your organization, the morale of that organization, right? How big that is. And then the third one, and this is where we have a little bit of a problem that I need to think about, and I want to call it resources. That's what I want to call it. Resources is currently a skill, however, but I like the name resources to cover what I'm thinking about. So resources for me is how much money you have, your physical, hey Toad, how are you doing? Your physical, hello, Krellin. I'm talking about what I want to do with these factions, right? And I was talking about how I just found a bunch of new things I've been doing a lot of searches, and some new things have cropped up which have made me think about how I want to do factions, but I'm really excited, but I have things I need to work through. And this is what I really want to do today, is work through some of this faction stuff. And there's some things to think about. There's some big things and some small things. So I wanted to talk about the 3 stress boxes I want for each of the organizations: notoriety, personnel, and resources, which could be renamed notoriety, human resources, and physical resources, but I feel like notoriety, personnel, and resources is fine. So with notoriety being what people think of you, and also if people are out to get you, like how much heat you have. Personnel being how big your network is, the morale of that network. I see you, Jer. And hello, Kulan and Jer. And then resources would be your like how much money you have, but also safe houses, physical location, like all the sort of gear, locations, all of that sort of stuff would be resources. Now, here's the problem, and that I really like these for names, but the problem is that right now resources is currently a skill, and I cannot use the same name twice. So I need to find a new name. Where are they skills? I need to find a new name for the resources skill, because I really want to use resources as one of these stress boxes. So the skill description is resources describes your character's general level of material wealth in the game world and ability to apply it. This might not always reflect cash on hand. In different ways, you can represent wealth in a particular setting. In a medieval game, it might be tied to land or vassals as much as gold. In a modern day, it might mean good lines of credit. This skill is in the default list to give you a basic, easy way to handle wealth as an abstraction without getting into minutia or bookkeeping. Some people might consider it odd to give a static skill rating for something that's were used, blah, blah, blah. Why not, says Jared. D&D uses the term level in like 3 different places. Now, the Fate Core SRD does talk about if you want to have a stress box, have that stress box be called wealth, and that's the thing that ends up taking stress. But I want the stress box resources to be all of that, right? So I need I need a different name for what would be the resources skill. So because I want resources to be a stress box. So I want a skill that would represent your level of material wealth and the ability to apply it. So it's a skill, right? So it's a skill which would be the ability, like the wealth you have and the ability to apply it. Personnel and material. Oh. So have it be notoriety, personnel, and material, and then keep the skill being called resources. Okay, that will work. All right. So those are our 3 stress boxes. We're going to come back to this. So then high concept. So there are 4 aspects: high concept, trouble, goal, and free. Now, before I go in, I want to say what I have found. I was looking for a faction, not much came up, but I looked at our organization, and I did get some interesting things. I don't know if this is actually interesting. No. So, okay. So there's a Camp X, which is Camp X was a military World War II training camp where they trained spies. They'll note that when you use material that way, you stress the last serial, material. Military ordnance might work. Hey, Daddy Sheepdo. Material. The problem with military ordnance is that I want it to be money, gear, physical locations, safe houses. I want it to be all of the material goods, digging the heck out of Charlie Foxtrot. I don't think I know it. I want it to be all of your material resources that you have. What if I just called it material? Material. Oh, cool. Oh, cool. Oh wait, there's 4 uses of level in D&D: character level, class level, spell level, and caster level. Oh, thank you. Sure. Isn't Only War that video game? Have you picked up on my dice trend yet? I haven't. I even enjoy how it's clear that the Chaos Gods have it out for the orcs. Oh. So I don't like the name yet. I feel like material. What? I'm thinking of names. Supply? What about supplies? Oh, Only War is a 40k RPG that focuses on the Imperial Guard. Thank you, Carlin. What do you think about supplies or quartermaster? Operational assets. Assets. What about just assets? Quartermaster would be good for a new skill name. It would be because it's doing something, yeah. So supply, asset, stockpile. I think maybe human resources. Mwah. I'm trying to avoid resources. Yeah. So let's do for your stress boxes. Let's make this assets. And I think I should probably just go with the boring route and do reputation, personnel, and assets. Personnel and material. I note that material is military materials and equipment, but it's not just going to be military materials and equipment. It will also be money, safe houses, It'll be like a wider range of physical assets. Hi, Atomica. I'm cheating on my own stream with you for my break. Oh, welcome in for your break. Yeah, so let's do assets, personnel, and the question is, does notoriety, should we keep notoriety, or should we just change it to reputation? Atomica, have a nice 10-minute break. So here's the question: do we keep notoriety, or do we make it reputation? Because reputation seems more neutral than notoriety. But notoriety also gets the idea that if you're being hunted, I suppose reputation does too. So let's just make that reputation. So our two, I am the scandal. So let's do reputation, personnel, and assets being the stress tracks for the. Well, so I would imagine that notoriety would be how much then, but because it has to be able to work for both directions, right? So, so these are the stress tracks, right? So like these are like your damage tracks, right? Because why it has to work for both, because I want this faction set up to be not only for resistance cells but also for the Nazis and also for the police and also for other factions, so that the factions can actually fight each other, right? So that there can be actions from faction to faction. So it's so I want things that will work. So because our heroes are going to be attacking Nazi factions as well as Nazi people, and I want them to be able to damage Nazi factions as well, right? So I want factions to be able to also have. I want this to also apply to like the local Nazi garrison, or the local, et cetera. Could do a bigger bar that starts in the middle. No, it doesn't. So let's go with reputation or intelligence. I think intelligence is a skill. If we did reputation and notoriety, then we'd have four stress tracks, and yeah. Let's go. Yeah, let's do reputation, because all factions can have their reputation damaged, and one of the consequences for a damaged reputation could be that they're looking into you and they know you more, right? So I feel like if we do that, we're good. So with this, I want to talk. Stress tracks are things that can be damaged, correct? And reputation, personnel, and assets are all things that can be damaged. So I have an idea, and I'm really excited about this idea, and I've not seen this anywhere else. But I like it, and it's a mechanic that I came up with in the shower or somewhere else. But this is how I'm thinking that there are other things we've not worked out when it comes to factions. But this is what I have figured out for how I want part of how I want faction combat to work. Also, these are now RPA factions. Mm-hmm. So here's what I'm thinking about how I want faction conflict to work. And I'm really excited about this. This is really exciting to me. I like this a lot. I like this a whole lot. Now, there are a couple of things that I don't yet have worked out, but this part I have worked out, and I like this a lot. So I'm thinking that the players will start off with 3 skills, 2 average, and 1 fair. And that's 2 at +1 and 1 at +2. Or the stress test we know as your wrap. I figured this out in my shower or somewhere else. Whose shower? I don't know whose shower I was in. I was in someone's shower. So here's my thinking. If you get taken out, right? If your faction gets taken out, what happens is one of your skills is lessened, right? So if you have a skill of security at 3, well, it would be at 2, let's say, then that security would be lessened to 1. And if a faction is reduced to 0 in all of its skills that it has, then that faction is taken out completely. So this allows for kind of a long-term conflict, which means I'm thinking about how the players themselves are going to want to like slowly chip away at some of the larger faction support of the factions they're up against. Hello 999 ELB 999 ELB. How are you? So like, and this also they have to then think about keeping themselves safe. So I think the skills become once your faction no longer has any skills, that means it cannot act on its own, which means the faction basically dissolves. So my idea is that once your faction gets taken out, you reduce one of your skills. And so it becomes important for the players to increase the skills of their faction through RP and milestones and goals, and then also attack the factions of their rivals. Okay. This hello Count Jacula. This is for an RPG. I am going to be right now. I'm doing prep for an RPG that I'll be running. I would like to start in February, but it might start in March. So starting either February or March, where I will be running a French resistance campaign using Fate Core. And right now I'm trying to work out how to modify a Fate Core to give me what I want. And I've got a lot of the stuff for the players worked out. I think I've got to read a couple more things that I want to adjust for the players part. But what I want to do is I want to create factions so that each character would have the players as a group would have a faction that they would be in charge of, which would be their resistance cell. And there'd be other factions. Some of them might be allies, some of them might be opposition, and figuring out a way to the sort of the interaction between the factions and the player characters and how they can and how to sort of deal with this. 999 ELB says, I'm a bit shit, had fallout with my asshole brother, need to organize a doctor's appointment and pray I don't need a consultant case. Waiting times are 3 times the rest. Ooh, 3 times longer. Oh, I am so sorry, 999 ELB. That's awful. Also, your brother, asshole. Disapprove. And I'm sorry about that. And I hope that if you do have to take a consult, that the waiting time is faster than it could be. Do you know what you could use, what you could do for those skill levels? What does the faction game system do for the player? So here's what happens. Since this is Fate Core, the faction itself will have some skills, will have some stunts, will have fate points, and will have, Christmas. We'll have also aspects. So as a player, you can invoke the aspects of your faction to get bonuses for yourself. There'll be fate points in that faction that the players can then use for themselves if they need to. They can sort of, if they run out of fate points, they can pick up some from the faction itself. The faction they can roll, those factions can also do things on their own. So if you have a faction that's really good at research, you can have the faction do it. Like you can have your faction do research for you, and so that you don't have to do it, you can have them do it. You can get. Krella does not know about faction fate points. I think the dreaded holiday scatter shot at finding anyone at their job. Oh, ooh, so true, Caldrake. I'm thinking that they wouldn't have. They would have like 1 or 2, and you might need them to power stunts. So right, I was thinking that they could. Now, one of the questions is if the faction has fate points. Let's say they have 2. Do I reduce the number of fate points the players have from 2 to 1? Probably not. Give me thoughts on that one. The players can use their own fate points to invoke the faction aspects. Giving them more from the factions kind of undoes your fate point reduction for grittiness. Hello, Caldrake. Well, Night Witches uses Powered by the Apocalypse, and I don't want to use Powered by the Apocalypse for this game, because actually I don't want players to be limited by playbooks, and I don't want it to be sort of move-based like that. So that's not what I want, so I want to do Fate instead, because I think that'll be easier. Krellin, I see your point. So I see the factions are abilities that the player can activate for assistance. Yes. And it also represents their organization, and also the organizations against whom they are fighting. So they can get resources from their faction, they can have their faction do things, they can increase their faction, make it more powerful, and they can use that to sort of attack other factions. Daddy Sheepdew says, you can make them go damaged before they drop and have a chance to recover or shatter that state. So like, you can present situations where the enemy faction has a security level that is damaged and ready to fall, but the player faction's asset level, for example, is also damaged. They have to decide whether to hit the enemy or defend their own. If they don't attack, the enemy could recover based on a roll of some kind. More strategery-like options. Yes, Coldrake. Here's the scene. Here's the objective. Go and don't get killed. Gee, Sheep, it's like you've given a lot of thought to faction versus faction mechanics. I think, so here's what I'm thinking in terms of repair. So when it comes to, because you've got your stress boxes, and those will recover when you do things on them. You've got your consequences if you can't take stress, and those are negative things that are going to impact you. Things like, your security system is compromised, or you lost something that will, you can't visit your safe house. Some kind of thing that will make your life difficult for a time until you can recover them. But I think that faction repair, what I think that would be actually is, since one of the things I was thinking about is, this is why I think I'm doing this by skills, is because with skills you don't actually have to do faction repair. What you do instead is you get a milestone. So when you get a milestone, you're able to get new skills, right? So you can increase a skill or get a new skill. So all the factions have to do is succeed in a major milestone, and they're able to sort of repair their stuff. How do you succeed in a major milestone? Your faction has a goal, and that goal could be recruit new members, or gain an ally. So your faction will have some kind of goal, and that goal can represent, and if you meet that goal through missions, et cetera, that's a milestone. You up your skills, which then basically is a way to repair them as well. So what I'm thinking of is that, and remember, it's going to be difficult for their skills to be damaged. They'll be taking they have to be taken out for that to actually happen. So I think it won't be so easy for them to be taken out. Carlin says, but anyway, I think the fate points are the player's mechanic. If they want to use aspect stunts the faction has, they have to use their own points to fuel that. That's fair, Krellin. And I think that we can, we'll try it with no fate points. We'll try that with no fate points. Although they could we'll try it with no starting fate points for the faction, but the factions could get fate points. They could earn them through compels or hostile invokes. Let's say that. Fate points. So the thing is, Count Jacula, is that Count Jacula, you gave me two questions. Is the RPG more combat-based or RPG-based? Krellin says it's RP-based. Fate is a narrative system. I'm going to give two answers to that. I'll give two answers to that. And so many things here. I want to answer all these things. But Coldrake says, fate point equals critical juncture pivot point. Fate points aids in the chances of fate lending a hand in your success, even a nat 1 is success. No, fate points are a meta currency that the players have, that they are allowed to use a fate point to give themselves a bonus if they have. So it's like it's a narrative. It's a narrative currency. So everybody starts with, and I know that people are still talking. I'm going to scroll up. Everybody starts with a certain number of fate points. In a regular fate game, you get 3. This one's a little bit grittier, so we're going to bring it down to 2. In fate, you, as a player, you can use fate points. So a player decides, I want to use fate points. You can use them retroactively, but you have to be able to justify it. So let's say you roll your dice and you need a 2 and you roll a 1, which would be a fail. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to run really fast to jump on a train. Like you're trying to run to jump on a train. And you have to roll your athletics and you need a 2 to jump on this train, and you roll a 1 instead, which is not a success. If you had an aspect, because all characters are defined by aspects, you get 5 aspects. And what if one of your aspects is high school track star, which is relevant to sort of being running fast enough to catch a speeding train or a train that's taking off, you can spend that fate point to get a +2 on that roll, and then that brings it up to a 3. So you're able to say, because I was such a track star, then I'm able to sort of actually get on that train after all. Or you can use that fate point to re-roll your dice, or you can use the fate point to change an element of the scene. So, for example, where are we? Everybody's talking. It's so good. Let's see. Yes. So then, with your fate point, give me. Where's my? You can do the re-roll situation by invoking an aspect. You can do a hostile invoke. So if the train, for example, let's say you don't have anything personally, you don't have any positive aspects that make you faster to catch that train. And then, but the train has an aspect old and rickety. You could sort of make a hostile invoke and say, hey, I think that resistance to lower to get on the train should be lower because it's old and rickety. So I'm gonna use a fate point to do a hostile, so to make it easier for me, and then that, so you can do that. So you can invoke aspects with your fate points. You can also make a change in the situation with your fate point. Where's my fate point? Here it is. This is what I'm looking for. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. All right. And now I want all of this back. There we go. You can, give me a second. You can declare a story detail. So let's say, and when you declare a story detail, the GM and the table has to accept it. But let's say you're running to catch that train, and the train doesn't have any. There's no invokes you can have. You could say, for example, that you could use that fate point, and you could say, I would like to declare a story detail. I would like to say that there is. Let's say that there's another train coming, and so this train has to slow down and wait. And maybe the GM's like, okay, I feel like that's plausible. I'll let you spend that fate point to sort of say another train is coming on a track, so they have to wait, which slows it down so you can get on. Or you could say, turns out, maybe you could say something like, you could use a fate point to declare a story detail to say the guard is somebody that you'd helped out one time, and so the bouncer for the bar that you want to get into happens to be a friend of yours, and so they'll let you in. I could say, okay, you can spend a fate point for that, or you could spend a fate point to say, I really I want there to be a chandelier in this room. Okay, right? Like, so so you basically have the ability to sort of declare some kind of story detail, or you can. There are some stunts that cost fate points to use. For example, oftentimes like maybe superpowers would cost fate points, but there might be some stunts that are a little bit rule breaking. Like I would say, if it's a game where almost nobody has psionics and you have some psionic powers, you'd probably have to spend a fate point to use them if it's not a particularly high-powered game. Or some other kind of rule-breaking thing. You have a stunt that breaks the rules in a way, you might spend a fate point for that. And then the fourth thing you can use with your fate point is that fate points, your GM can compel you. Let me kill this orc with a syringe. I do have a soft spot for Bentham's Trooper. So you have compel. So you have these aspects, which are things like, high school track star is one of your aspects, or alcoholic could be your trouble aspect, and the GM can make a compel, and the compel is giving you some kind of story twist. So, for example, if you're in this bar, we are talking about the campaign that Sheepy is running and posting to YouTube. So I'm gonna have to look at it. So if let's say your character's aspect is this, they're an alcoholic and they sneak their way into this bar, so they have to go to do some surveillance. And I say, you have a trouble aspect of alcoholic. I'm going to compel you and say that your character, rather than actually doing what they're supposed to do, which is to sort of stay sober and do surveillance on the mob boss, they actually get drunk and make a scene and get kicked out. And the player can say, I don't want that to happen. I will give you a fate point not to let that happen, right? So your fate economy lets you re-roll or get a bonus to a die, power a stunt, change a detail of the story, or say no to a compel. And if you don't have fate, if you've run out of fate points, then that will not happen. Now, if you take the compel, you get an extra fate point. That is how you can earn them. Or if somebody invokes an aspect against you, that will get one. Or if you concede a conflict. I am familiar with Blades in the Dark Jacula. I am indeed. I am actually currently playing I was playing in a Scum and Villainy game, which is like Blades in the Dark. And so yes, I am. Now let's see. So that was what the fate points are used for. And then I'm going through our chat. So one of the things I was thinking was I didn't want repair to be a downtime activity because I'm not really into, I don't like and I know that Blades in the Dark has a really strict mission versus downtime binary, and I don't like it. I don't like the sort of splitting. These are downtime actions. These are not downtime actions. I don't like that. And so I don't want repair to be a downtime activity because I don't want a binary, because I don't count Jacula because I don't like the playbooks. I don't like the binary between downtime activity and not downtime activity. I don't want, like, everyone's like, you should do Blades. I don't want to do Blades. I don't like, I find it kind of artificial. And that's not the feeling that I want for, I don't want characters made off of playbooks, and I don't want, I don't want characters made off of playbooks. I don't want moves in that way. And I don't like the artificial binary between downtime and heists. Those are not things that I like. So I don't particularly enjoy that part of Blades in the Dark. So it's, like the whole, like, you get 2 downtime options in between each heist, and then you can have a special move that gives you 1 more downtime option. And like, I'm not into it. I'm playing in a game that does it, and so it's fine because I'm playing in it, and it's all right. But I don't want to GM a game that has that's so restricted that way. I find that very restrictive, and I want things to be a bit more fluid. I also want players to be able to make whatever kind of character they want and not be stuck to a playbook, which is like being a class, and I don't want this to be class-based. So I don't want to do Blades. So that's not, so where are the players intended to be doing, what are the players intended to be doing in this French Resistance game? Daddy Sheepdo, you keep talking. I'm not even mad. So because they can do lots of different things. They can choose all sorts of things. They're going to be fighting Nazis, but they'll be it's don't even worry about it, Krellin. So they're going to be the French resistance, so there are a lot of things they'll be doing, but what they do will be up to them. It's not going to just be go get a heist and then do the heist and then get the stuff, but they can do all sorts of things. They can work to increase they can work to increase their membership. They can do propaganda. They can do, I mean, any number of things. My Patreon Discord link doesn't work. What does that, wait, what do you mean? My Patreon Discord link doesn't work. Wait, what? What do you mean? Wait. Oh, sheepies. I see. Okay. Yeah, so they'll be able to do all sorts of things. They'll be, really whatever they want to do. This won't be... Come on in my house, come on. Come on in my house, I'm gonna give you candy. Come on in my house, I'm gonna give you everything. Thank you for the host, BP. Thank you. Thank you very much. Is it, this is just straight historical RPG, no twist. It will not be, there will be no Cthulhu, there'll be no magic, there will be no superpowers, and there will be, and I think this will be really, because one of the things is that people just generally don't do historical games. They tend to make their historical games include the supernatural in some way, and I'm excited by regular human beings who fight against amazing odds. Like, you don't have to be the twist is that the Nazis are the bad guys. Yes, Carla, that you don't have to have superpowers to fight evil, that you can be like a school teacher who decides to join the resistance and does this sort of amazing work. And so that's the thing that I'm quite invested in. Question, will it be a session 0 so they work one-on-one with you to create their character? Will session 1 be this is how you all end up together? There's always Cthulhu. It just might be, say, hiding in the ocean. So this is a good question. There's always a session 0. I always do a session 0 that's offline. Always. If you're going to stream a game, when you're streaming a game, I think it's crucial to have a session 0. There's lots of praying in the foxholes. People did see, although a lot of the, that's true. But I mean, I could just make this a superhero game and then I wouldn't even have to use Fate at all. I could just say, okay, let's make it, I would just pick, one of the many superhero games. And then, we would just be superheroes. And then, like, the Nazis are not really the bad guys. Then it's actually supernatural people. I mean, and actually, if I just want to do supernatural, I would just do Achtung Cthulhu and not even worry about doing any adaptation at all. And it'd be over the top and really big, and they'd all be like hyper powered, like, oh, we're like, shh. But there are enough hyper powered cinematic games for people to do that, and I want a historical. I want a good, gritty historical of everyday heroes rather than supernatural heroes. Do you have your players ready? I have, because I ran Night Witches last spring, and the players from Night Witches have first refusal, and then there are a couple of people who were the guest stars who have next refusal. So I basically have a list of the cast that I will get, that I have to ask first before I reach out. If you have the Nazis or the bad guys, then you get the really interesting issue of just regular soldiers. Exactly. Some good, some bad, and the duality of resisting occupying powers with soldiers who are just like you and don't want to be there either. Yes, Daddy Sheep do. That is one of the things that I want. I really want... like, I'm not into like the black and white big, like I want sort of shades of gray, difficulty, hard choices. Like, how are we going to do this? What are we thinking about? And what do you do when that person doesn't want to be there either? And how do you sort of deal with the complexities of this moment? And so that's what I'm wanting to deal with, where it's not like, I don't want it to be, easy in that way, right? That cinematic games are easy. I want it to be something where the players really get to deal with hard choices and thinking about things, secrets and worries. The hard part of real history is the players being able to tell the difference between being a German and being a Nazi supporter, or being French and being a collaborator, right? Damn it, Super HB, I want to come in mid-game as Captain America. Different game. Different game. Reminds me of a scene in Band of Brothers, says Jer, when someone's reading a newspaper from back home and they say, turns out we're fighting Nazis because they're the bad guys. Yeah. We're here because we're here because we're here because we're here. Shades of Grey with Nazis? Yeah, because we're also in occupied France. Is that woman who's a collaborator with the Nazis, is she a bad person, but she's doing it because otherwise her children would starve? Should she just be shot in the head or no? Like, what do you think about that? Like 1% of the German armed force were Nazis or something. Nazis in French weren't too bad compared to Eastern Front. Right. So, well, the Eastern Front was terrible. That was awful. Yeah, sometimes the French supporters were worse than the regular German sympathizers. So, like, I want it to sort of capture the difficulty, the paranoia, the fear, the isolation, the danger of being a regular person who is fighting in a resistance. So I don't need superpowers. Feed her to the weird revenant that accidentally stalked the Maquis by eating some Germans that broke into her house. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, so this is gonna be realistic historical, straight historical RPG. And the Count Jacula asks, is this RPG more combat based or RP based? And what were they called? Quislings. Quisling, but you also might have some fifth column in there as well. I think you might want to declare the Nazis the bad guys by default. Well, the protagonists are all French resistance, so they are fighting Nazis. Not being able to trust your neighbor, or even a family member because of their side they were on, right? So the idea that you can't trust. But the thing is, not all Germans are Nazis, and I think. Krellin just said it, right? Not the Nazis are the bad guys, but not all Germans are Nazis. And Krellin, we're on the same page, and sort of recognizing that not all Germans are Nazis. And then what do you think about that? And right, so I think that there's right, sort of thinking about the complexity about that, and that you can be a bad guy without being a stereotype, right? That you can be like a Nazi villain who is very pleasant, or who doesn't have like the big, Snidely Whiplash mustache. That what evil looks like. I mean, I'm thinking about Hannah Arendt and the banality of evil, right? When she talks about one of the things about evil is that we like to make evil monstrous. We like to make like, yes, Krellin, like the mayor. It is really interesting that even today, the propaganda from World War II still lingers that all Germans from those time are Nazis. Buffy season 3, I agree with you, Krellin. Best villain ever. And I think when I think about Hannah Arendt, when she was talking about the banality of evil, she's a German Jew who was also like a philosopher and theorist. And she was thinking that one of the problems we have with, so she was writing in the 50s, she lived through World War II, she had to leave, of course. When she was writing about the 50s, she talked about the ways in which we wanted to imagine the Nazis, and we still do. We want to make them monsters. Like, they've got to have like supernatural powers. They're super evil. Like, they're the worst. Like, they're unimaginable. Like, no one is as bad as Hitler. They're not even human anymore. They're monstrous. But the problem is that once we do that, then it allows us to distance ourselves from them. Then, like, oh well, they're these monsters, and we're not monsters, so we're not liable for any of that. And you can always see the monsters because they're like huge monsters, right? And that allowed, by dehumanizing Hitler and the Nazis, that makes it so that we can never have to look at ourselves as doing bad things. Like, I mean, maybe we're doing a little bit of stuff. Maybe we're putting Japanese Americans in internment camps, but we're not Nazis. Like, they're monsters, so what we do is never that bad. And the problem is that sometimes they weren't like stark, raving, mad, insane lunatics. Sometimes they were bureaucrats who just filled out the paperwork and didn't do anything to stop it. Sometimes, and this is what Hannah Arendt was talking about when she was looking at Eichmann, who was like, I didn't do anything. I didn't murder anybody personally. I just, filled out paperwork. Like, I'm not a bad person. And that, evil doesn't have to just be the one person shooting people in the head. It can be that person who's making sure the trains run on time as those trains take people into Auschwitz. It can be the clerk, right? It doesn't have to be. It could be that professor at the university who wrote about the body of the nation being like the body of a human, and therefore viruses how we kill viruses in a body, we should also kill viruses in a nation. Who they didn't do anything; they were being philosophers. What did they do? But they're just as evil, right, as the people who we sort of make the obvious villains. So I want it to be complicated. Yeah. Well, I gotta be honest, if you're going to stream the game, you're going to want a clear distinction between the bad guys and good guys when dealing with Nazis. Count Jackula, I am, and also if you add Angel Season 5, and everyone else is just, ich habe nur Befehle ausgeführt, I second OBS. Yeah, Captain America War Soldier Nick Fury, you know what the files. You know, Count Jackula, I am going to run it the way I'm going to run it, and I'm going to run it streamed, and I'm not going to give false history because it makes people feel better, and that's the thing that I think is important. Like I'm not going to make history a fiction so that people can feel good about themselves, because I think that is actually not progressive. I think rewriting the past so that we can feel good about ourselves and not think about our position in the situation I don't think is actually progressive. It doesn't actually fight fascism and authoritarianism. So yeah. Right. So that's going to be, I think, really important, that to do this right, you have to actually know your history, and you have to do the history well, as opposed to just oh, thanks. I mean, I'm also a historian, so this is also part of my job. And you know what, though, Count Jackula? I am going to trust that the audience is not stupid, and if the audience doesn't like it, they don't have to watch. You know what I mean? Like this is the thing. If the audience does not want to deal with real history, they don't want to learn real history, they want to just imagine propaganda that makes themselves feel better and that allows them to do fascist things because they're not Nazis, I'm not going to support that. And that's like I'm not going to I'm not going to support people allowing themselves a fiction that allows them off the hook, because I don't think that's responsible. You know what I mean? Even worse than Nazis, SS. History is only one field here. Psychology, sociology, I do not think we are done yet. Understanding, explain what the heck happened there, at least not completely. Oh yeah, I mean, there's cultural studies, there's history, sociology, German studies. There's so many things I sort of think about. Political science. And what's worse than everyone? The Americans. Damn, Johnny-come-latelys shakes tea at the Americans. And yet here in Germany, the far right want to leave the topic be. They want to make a 180-degree turn on the culture of remembering warning. Heck, as soon as I heard about Trooper doing the Night Witches, I surfed and I read the shit out of all I could about the witches, because history, and they were pretty darn cool women. They were. Also, my key is far too close to my key is far too close to my inner key. I see what you're trying to say, but I feel the need to point out you're playing with fire. You know, Count Jackula, I believe in making art, and I think that art is important. I'm not here to make entertainment. If I wanted to just make entertainment that made people feel good, I would have all the Nazis in black hats being like, aha, I am the Nazi, I am the worst ever, and I have no background at all, and you can just shoot them in the head, and then we'd play a game where the players could just shoot like hundreds of Nazis and then feel good about themselves for like committing mass murder and never have to worry about it because they're the good guys and the Nazis are the bad guys. And they have to think about what does it mean to kill someone? What does it mean to have to deal with the complexities of a situation. And I wouldn't do a French, and as a matter of fact, I wouldn't do a French resistance campaign at all. I would just do a superhero campaign where they fly over to Nazi Germany, punch Nazis, and then fly back. I would never have to deal with issues of rationing, issues of kidnapping, issues of blackmail. I would never have to deal with what are the questions of what are you willing to do to save your country and fight the Nazis? Are you willing to do bad things? Are you willing? What are you willing to do to liberate your country? Like there's a lot of like being in the resistance was not easy. It was really difficult, and it was hard, and it was not. There are hard questions that you have to ask yourself, and I want to know what are the players going to do, and. Who paid? Just make a bullet hell because Nazis aren't people, right? Exactly, right? You can just do that really easily, right? You can just make all of the Nazis villains and never have to worry about it, and all the heroes you can just do black and white. You can do black and white morality where there's no difficult questions you have to make for yourself. None. And if I were going to do that, I would just pick up the old Marvel Heroes system, and we'd all make superheroes, and we'd just go and we'd fly over, punch the Nazis, and we'd be like, we punched Nazis, we're so awesome, and then we'd leave. But we'd never have to deal with when you attack Nazis, those Nazis are going to strike back and they're going to attack civilians. So how do you feel about that? What do you do now that those Nazis just rounded up a bunch of people in this village and shot them? And that was because of you, what you did, because you struck at the Nazis. Do you feel bad about that? Do you feel good about that? What about if you have to try to go and befriend some Nazis so you can infiltrate them, and you have to hang out with them so you can find out information from them? How do you deal with that? What happens if the Gestapo person has one of your loved ones captured and they want you to turn on your fellow resistance members? Do you or do you not? What happens if you get captured and tortured? Do you give up your friends? Do you not? There are all these really complicated questions that you would do in a more complicated game, and I want a more complicated game as opposed to the feel-good game, right? Even some prisoner of war camps had officers in charge who questioned why they were doing what they did. We can't paint all Germans with the same Nazi brush. Some of the things resistance over World War II did, and the Allies did, not pretty. History is written by victors. It wasn't pretty, and it's why so many that survived can't talk about it, because how would a civilian understand? Same for guys in Vietnam, yeah. Jer asks, Trooper, do you have a command for Night Witches? It would be good to direct people to Geek Space's playlist. Night Witches is on my YouTube. I have a playlist for Night Witches on my YouTube channel. So if people wanted to, where is it? So I'm a YouTube, and on my YouTube, I've got all the playlists of the shows that I was in, including Night Witches, if you wanted to see it. Plus, if you paper over the past to forget it, you make it that much harder, make it that much easier for it to happen again. Or, like in Civet Prying Ryan, if you feel bad and let a guy go, and he comes back later and kills your buddy, what was a kindness in one instance is a huge mistake later. That's another really great one, right? So these are all difficulties that I want to sort of think about. Who can you trust? Who can you not trust? Very much sort of Spy Who Came From the Cold, Wilderness of Mirrors. And I did Night Witches, and that did well. But I understand that we live in a time period where many people don't want to think about difficulties. They just want, we live in a time, we've always lived in a time where there's some people who just want easy answers, right? And I think that easy answers is great for some games, but that's not the game that I want to run. I don't want to run a game where it's just easy for the players to know, we have the white hats on, we're going to do the right thing, and the right thing is always very clear, and it's just, you know, you're in occupied France, you just shoot any German you see, and that's the right thing, and none of the French are collaborators, and you never have to deal with like what happens when somebody that you care about is a collaborator, because that's too messy. Yeah. And I don't think it is, I don't think it's true. I don't think it's useful. And I don't think it is helpful, right? And when I do art, I want the art to be meaningful. Like, I think art impacts people and makes them think about things, as opposed to just sort of turning off your mind and just sort of being entertained. And I don't want that. Like, and honestly, right, if I wanted to do that, if I wanted just feel good power fantasies where heroes mow down villains, I just play D&D. I just run a D&D game and say, here, there are a bunch of orcs, go and kill them, and they'd kill the orcs, they'd never think about it, and they'd be the heroes. And or drow, we kill lots of drow, right? Be like, oh, they're these dark-skinned drow who live underground, they're all evil, go and murder them. And then they'd murder them and they'd feel good about it and be like, woo. We're so awesome. But I don't want to do that. I want them to deal with, you go into the resistance with idealism, and then it gets really messy really fast. And how do you maintain your heroism in that moment? I just finished reading a semi-biography of a special forces dude who worked in the jungle with the Yards, harassing the Kong. I served between conflicts and never had to make those kinds of decisions in battle, life, death situation. Reading those biographies gives a faint glimpse into the hell, chaos, weirdness of war. Oh, I won't take it as shade. It's, you know, I wasn't sure how Night Witches would go, but it didn't take long to love the game, the story, the characters. The first edition black and white D&D mindset is so alien to me as someone that's been playing D&D since first edition. Yeah, it's that first edition mindset was like, oh, wow. Yeah. And, ooh, yeah, it's not my jam. I personally dislike medieval fantasy adventures. I prefer macro fantasy. Yeah, so I think I think that I want the game to be hard, you know, emotionally intense. I want it to be intense. Oh, speaking of black and white, great game. Shame it's hard to get No More Sequels. Oh yeah, black and white. I remember that one. That's Molyneux, right? And one of the things is that not all Germans are Nazis, and that is a difficulty that people sometimes that's something that people are not as interested in, but that's a true statement. Not all Germans are Nazis, and some Germans were Jewish, and some Germans were part of a fifth column, and some Germans did not like what was happening and worked against it. There were Germans who were members of the resistance, the White Rose, for example, and to sort of say like if you're a German you're a Nazi really diminishes and is disrespectful to German Jews, German Roma, all sorts of Germans who were not Nazis. And I don't think that's a good story to tell. I don't think that's an interesting story to tell. And I don't want to tell that story. I don't want to tell the story wherein we can just sort of put a Nazi cap on all Germans and like a good guy cap on all non-Germans. Because there were also Nazis who were French or Belgian or American. There were American Nazis, and there were Germans who were not Nazis. And I really want to make it complicated. The campaign world I made when 3E came out has orcs as one of the core PC races, and the evil races, goblinoids, who are corrupted versions of PC races, aren't even universally evil. I also enjoy gray areas, true emotional conflicts in my RP, right? I want there to be emotional conflicts. I taught my lion to lightning villagers accidentally, but couldn't get him to stop, so I had to also teach him to cast rain on them after he set them on fire with lightning. Ouch. Second OBS, Into the White might be a good movie to add to the topic here. German and British air crews crashing in Norway and have to survive in a small hut. Ooh, that sounds really interesting. Ooh. I still have no idea how he learned to poop on them. Daddy sheep, do I worry? City of Heroes called their super Nazis fifth column, and that's all I can think of when I hear that phrase. Oh, that's a yeah. Some baker's daughter suddenly finds herself part of the war and is now expected to go out and kill someone they know, or blow up the place she knows most who work there. This is the World War II version of the Joker Ledger, seeing how to push someone to the edge and see if they break up. Right, because that's really like, okay, so let's see, one of the things that you do is you've got to go and do sabotage. You need to sabotage farms and rail lines and things that keep people working and get them food, like friends of yours, family members. Do you do it? Hey, Atomica, right? So I want this to be complicated and difficult, and I want to see how the heroes emerge in that moment. I'm not saying that Hitler's really a good guy. I'm not saying that at all. Nazi ideology is awful and terrible. It's just that not all Germans are Nazis. And I'm not interested in running a game that allows the players to dehumanize a whole group of people and then just murder them without thinking about it. That is not a game I ever want to run. Ever. No matter what game system we're in. And so that's not what I want to do with this one. I want... Right? Like that's what I want to do. I want to do a game that's I want to do a game fundamentally that's human. That's what I want to do. I want people are talking outside. Strange. I want a game that's really about humanity and that is about being human and the difficulties of being human in a time of war. And the sort of the heroism of that regular person doing trying to be in this moment. And now suddenly reminded of the old British comedy, Allo Allo, the worst press resistance group ever. Oh yes, Allo Allo. Trooper, you're running VTM. Let's just say I have run VTM in the past, on more than one occasion. So yeah, and I feel like the idea that I think it's and look, here's the thing. I know that by trying to do a nuanced game of emotional complexity, I will lose some viewers. If you dehumanize people, then you have to trust that accusers are telling the truth and have no ulterior motives. Ask Salem how that went. Yeah. And like, I know that like Count Jacula, I think, has left the chat because I think Count Jacula's probably disturbed by the fact that I don't want to sort of have all Germans be Nazis. And so I know that there are going to be people that will not be happy with a game that has nuance, but I'm not running an RPG for everyone. Do you know what I mean? I'm running an RPG that is something that I can believe in, and I will recognize that will not be for everyone, but I also don't have to have the game be for everyone. That's one of the beauties of having a full-time job that is not this, that I can run a game that I believe in, that I think is important, that I think is valuable, especially in this moment. And I don't have to worry about having hundreds of viewers or else I'll be out on the street. So that is something that I can do because I can. And again, Schindler's List, not all Germans were supporters by choice. Yep, that's exactly right. So that's the thing, right? That I want to be able to do a game that I think is actually really meaningful for the current moment. And your viewership is desired, not required. Yes, I would love to have hundreds of viewers, but I want people to be here because they're here for the thing, right? Not because they have to be. And yeah, like I think about that a lot. I think about like we live in a time where we have increasing neo-Nazis like running around in this world right now, and we have people being radicalized, people that you know, maybe not you personally, but I mean, people are being radicalized going online, and the people that are being radicalized are not monsters. They're just regular human beings who become radicalized. And I want people to know that this happens. Like, you don't have to be a cartoon villain to be a Nazi. Like, anybody could be a Nazi. And also, I want people to know that you don't have to be a superhero to stand up against injustice. You can be a regular person. You don't even have to be in the army to stand up against injustice with huge amounts of training. You can be a regular person to stand up against injustice. And that's what I want. And that also standing up against injustice is hard and it's difficult, right? So those are the things that are valuable for me in this particular one. There's also a trend of pushing moderates further right from the extremes. Yeah, that's true. And now, music question. Will you use period music to help with the flavor of this game? Is there flavor music in France at this time? So the thing is, Coldrake, there's amazing cabaret music, and that cabaret music would be amazing. There's all sorts of great music, but none of it is in public domain. So I cannot use actual period music, or else my entire stream would be muted the entire time. That is... Thanks, Disney, for pushing Congress to extend copyright. So, I mean, we only can now 1923. If it's 1923 or earlier, I can use it. If it's after 1923, I can't. So I cannot use any period music at all, right? So that's that is thanks copyrights. Krellin says, a school buddy of my brother's, who we both used to game with, has become a cop in Austin. So yeah, I do know people have been radicalized. Yeah, that sucks. And so like I want there to be complexity. I want to think about people who become radicalized and turn into people that you don't know anymore. I want to think about finding people who you think are your allies who are not, people you think are your enemies who are not. I really want to have that sort of complexity that I think is really important in this particular moment. Make the leaders of the cells all old World War I vets who only listen to their music, i.e. public domain World War I era stuff. I might be able to make someone who actually does that, Crow, and I might be able to get a little bit of World War I music in there. Although if I did World War I game, then we could use period music the whole entire time. Just noting it. That's all. Can't use 1923 and... Ooh. I'm seeing... how's my bit rate? Okay, it looks fine. Belgian resistance in World War I. Can't you use 1923 music and pretend it's 1943 music like everyone else? Share! That makes me crazy when people do that. Put public domain music through a radio audio filter and hope no one notices. I'm going to tell you something. Daddy Sheep Dude, they are really good at catching this. I'll have 5-second clips of something. I played the goat Trouble goat. It was like 25 seconds of Taylor Swift's Trouble with the goat singing. That got muted. So anyway, I know that people are touchy about things, and so what I think I will just do is have huge numbers of content disclosure before the game starts, and I'll say, hey, this game is not for everyone. It is a serious historical look at World War II and the French Resistance, and that may not be for you, so then don't watch it. That goat has... Daddy Sheep 2 says that goat has very litigious lawyers, and that is true. Hey, BP. Good, because I just noticed a little bit of a weirdness, but my bitrate seems like it's good. I just noticed some weirdness there. Yeah, so I want... let me see. Yeah, it looks like there are a couple drop frames, but not too much to sort of not too bad. 1917 over there, George Cohen, which was again used. That's true. I can use over there. So I've got And look, I know that that they're gonna be people who are gonna be weird about it. They're gonna want something different, but they should watch a different show then. And I also don't think, I mean, for heaven's sakes, people are streaming all sorts of things. And if you can stream, people are streaming some dark stuff here. And yeah. Again, I'm going to find players for whom this is what they want to do, and then I'm going to put lots and lots of content disclosure so that audiences who don't want a gritty World War II game won't have a gritty World War II game. That's all. They won't watch it. I feel like that's all that you can do, right? And I think not talking about the past is not the way to go. Fun game. The Battle of Midway was not a fun day, yet gamers love creating the damn battles. But they like to recreate them in a way that is fun. They're like, oh, Battle of Midway, so fun. Woo! And, or the Battle of the Bulge. Yeah, I'm not, yeah. If you ever explore World War I, you have to let me be in on it, consider my family history. Okay. All right. So, yeah, that's right? That's a thing. That's a thing. And I know it's, I mean, I suppose it'll be controversial to treat history realistically, but yeah. And I know it will be a thing, but I think it's the right thing to do. It's something I want to do. And look, I've been wanting to run this World War II game, French Resistance game, since 1987. Or so. My family were fairly lucky in World War II because the Free State told Hitler to stop, so we did. Ooh, how many pages of game mechanics have you posted noted so far? I've got a what page? I don't know what page. I need to put page numbers on this. I'm on page 4 or 5 probably at this moment. Insert page number. There we go. Yeah, I'm on page 5. Yeah. So, yeah, but I can run some sort of fantasy where people can feel good about things in a mini series another time. But again, I want to do something else a little bit more intense at the moment. Northern Irish guy here because most people won't get what I just said. Only 4 raids here. Oh wow. Huh. So, what I'm thinking is you're going to get your skills. If your faction gets taken out in a conflict, you're going to lose one of your skills is going to be dropped. If you lose all of your skills, then your faction falls apart. You can up your skills through milestones by making goals. You can do missions to up your skills. You can do missions to up your goals, right? So that will increase your pass a goal, get a milestone, up your skills that way. So there are ways to increase your skills for your faction, which will make your faction more powerful, give you more bonuses. Just put a note front. This is a historical RPG. Wait, Coldrake, are you saying that Cats is not historical? I am scandalized. So there's a thing that I wanted to bring up for you to see what you think about this. Cats is 100% historically accurate. Fight me. So I'm looking at, because we're talking about factions, right? So looking at Camp X, it has a modified skill list, which is fine. And there's a thing about using skills that I wanted to discuss with you, and it was... Don't actually fight me. Hitler was scared if he pissed off Ireland, he would bring the American politicians with Irish sent into the war earlier. So, high concept, war, skill list... language, group consequences. So here's a thing that they have, and I thought I'd just read this to you all and see what you think about it. In addition to the usual stress tracks and consequences, Camp X uses a modified version of group consequences from the Fate System Toolkit. Come back there. Since the agents in a cell almost always work as a team, they'll be in danger together, face consequences of their actions together, and could even be compromised together. As such, the team takes consequences before the agents do. The team has the same number of consequence slots as a character, one mild, one moderate, one major. When an agent chooses to use consequences slot instead of taking stress, the consequences is taken by the team if the corresponding slot is empty. So Ben gets into a fight with several German guards. He manages to get away, but the Germans inflict 4 stress. The team currently only has a mild consequence, so Ben fills in the moderate with injured agent. He thinks he's cracked a rib. If he gets into another fight, the moderate slot on his own sheet is still free. Group consequences can be cleared like the regular one, using an overcome action and whatever skill seems most appropriate. For example, if the team has taken the major consequence compromise, actions must be made to arrange new cover identities for everyone before it can be cleared. Then you've got things like German radio surveillance, ID by local police, contact lost, injured agent, safe house inaccessible, cleanup mission required, compromise, severely injured agent, known to Gestapo. So this is using the idea of... where is this? I'm looking for group consequences. So in this idea, the group itself is not its own character. They just have group consequences, which I don't think I want to do, because I want the faction people to work on its own, to be able to work on its own. So I think that we won't do that. But let's see what they say under group consequences. Group consequences. Instead of tracking them individually, supporting and main NPCs share a pool of group consequences. This gives you the option to sacrifice a supporting NPC now to make a main NPC more challenging later. This is kind of the group as a cell. What a member of a cell does can skew the entire group and lead to exposing the group. Yeah. But I want the cell to be able to work on its own, so it needs its own skills. And collateral... No, that's not exciting. But there was something else. Wasn't mission briefing. It was family favors was what it was. So in family favors, they also have organization stuff with an organization concept, secret, organizational goal, NPCs that represent it, organizational skills. So I thought I'd read this to you and see what you think about this. Each organization has a pool of skills related to its main business interests. For example, our monster hunting family might have caches of equipment buried across the country, accessible to any member who needs gear. Taking some level of resources to represent this would be appropriate, as would a few levels of contacts to represent folk in the community who support their work. Choose 3 skills from the standard list to represent the skill pool possessed by the family. One of the skills should be rated 2, and the others at 1 + 1 each. When a PC successfully calls on skilled aid from a member of the organization, they can add this bonus to their own skill check to represent the assistance they are receiving. Example. The members of the family use various confidence schemes and scams to make ends meet, allowing them to follow their true calling. They've learned a lot about monsters, though, so we set lore at 2, investigation at 1, and burglary at 1, giving members of the family a chance to call on their fellows for assistance with investigating monsters and their weaknesses, or engaging in more larcenous pursuits. Cultrix says, is there a list of available skills? Shooter versus sniper, recon versus tracker, lame damage versus sapper, or are we talking running, jumping, verbal skills? Fast talker versus Conway. I'm having to make up these skills myself. I'm making, there's a list of skills for characters, but I'm making up a list of skills for the factions. And I have just what I did before we started this stream is that I was working on a new skill list for the factions, like going through the faction skill list. And I have a skill list that I wanted to read to you all and tell me, I want to know what you think about it. Also, I just read something that is different, and I want to know what you think about it. That I was like, oh, what do I think about this? So I think under family favors, no, who was it? One of these things I was looking at. Where was it? Oh, goodness. One of these, oh, where was it? I saw a thing, which I cannot find right now, clearly, because I'm the worst, which used different things for skills. Like I need to find it. I cannot find it. Maybe I can find it if I do this. So there was and organization. Hold on, I will find it. I think it's actually in here. Maybe. Yes. Okay. I found it. Scrounger. If the faction skills don't match the character skills, there's no point in adopting. Yes. Right. Which I think, because I don't think I want to use that one. I don't think I want the skills to boost their own. I think I want them to be their own separate thing, which they can use to do their own stuff. That'll be on a personal level than a factual level. And some things might be over what's the word? Overlapped. So in Atomic Robo, the skills they give their organizations are coffers, guards, scholars, spies. So they give them basically units are their skills, but I don't think I want to do that. So like if you want your scholars to go off against somebody, then you spend your scholars to go off against, I don't know, the other scholars. But I don't think I like that. But that was something that somebody did. I thought I should tell you, but I don't think I like it. Because I think that's too high level. So let me tell you what skills that I currently have listed for the factions, and I want you to tell me if you think these are good, too many, not enough. We can think about this. So this is what I've got. I've got knowledge, because I can imagine some factions have a lot of knowledge, and you might be able to roll a knowledge skill to see if your faction knows stuff, sort of like lore, but it's not academics, it's sort of knowledge. For FYI, in the library of the CIA, Fighters in the Shadows, A New History of the French Resistance, and by Robert. Oh, huh. Coldrake, that's interesting. I'm going to write that down somewhere. Well, that looks interesting. I will look at that. So, all right, so this is what I've got. I'm going to tell you my skills, and I want you to tell me if you think I'm missing something or there are things that can be cut. And I'm also thinking about skills that could add to reputation, personnel, assets in terms of your stress boxes. So, knowledge. I have spycraft, which is also a player skill, but I feel like I would. And here's what I'm thinking in terms of skills. I'm going to pick it up. Coldrake. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that if your faction has its own character sheet when it can operate independently of you. So when you can say to your faction, "Hey, can you get this stuff for me?" Or can you do these things, right? Or I want the faction, which would involve people who are not necessarily your players, although it could also to do a thing. So knowledge, spycraft could or could not be a skill for a faction. Maybe not. Maybe. I don't know. I'll think about that. I do think contacts, but that could be renamed allies. Let's rename that allies. Construction, the ability to build things, because I could imagine guilds or whatnot having construction. Let's get rid of spycraft for the, well, let's see. I put decoy, and I was thinking about the thing that you would use to, and maybe that's not the right name for it, but the ability to throw off. I'll get there. Knowledge, allies, construction, decoy, demolitions, which players also have, maneuver, electronics. I'll think about that. Forgery, no, I don't want that at all. Forgery's out. Delete row. That would have to be under spycraft again. All right, so this is what I got. Knowledge, spycraft, allies, construction, decoy, question mark, demolitions, maneuver, electronics, that's a question mark. Research, surveillance, research could be investigate, security, propaganda, resources, assault, stealth. We probably don't need decoy then, but you might. Deception, rally. So the thing is that forgery is now going to be under spycraft. For personal skills, yes, for personal skills, forgery will be part of spycraft. Forgery could also be for food stamps or some other daily use paperwork. Yeah, I think that would all be under, like, basically forging, breaking and entering, all that kind of stuff. I think will be under spycraft, because Fate tries to have a slightly smaller skill list. Do faction skills represent NPCs in the cell? Electronics, radio, and basic electricity. So I think that faction skills represent sleep 999. It represents two things. It represents both NPCs in the cell and also PCs in the cell. Slim. Well, the Fate core list is actually pretty slim. I added forgery as a list, but I realized, but that was when I was still calling burglary. But I think if you just rename burglary spycraft, then you can fill in. Then forgery will just sort of go in there as well. Also, I'm going to add language as a skill, which would also include ciphers and codes. Add language. And probably also survival. Yes. So, what do these skills represent? So for me, they represent faction level things. And I would say that I imagine them being used in two different ways. One, did I not hear anything about supply or healing medicine skills? Resources would be supply. But yeah, resources would be supply. And healing. But the thing is, I don't think that healing is something that factions do against other factions. So it doesn't make sense as a faction skill to me. So I'm getting the kind of basic skills as being what you might know, be jumping from high school or college. No, so in Fate, they just have the list of skills in Fate. So like GURPS has got like hundreds of skills, but Fate does not. Fate has the fate skills, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Fate has only 18 skills total. Yes, Carlin, I want the faction skills to be things factions can do against other factions or things they can do in the world. So, for example, a faction can research, right? Like, I can see factions researching, that would make sense, or having knowledge. Medicine, healing, well, no, so medicine is a skill that players will have. So players will have the medicine skill. Players will have it, but I don't think factions will have that skill. So in Fate, there are very few skills because Fate is built to be a little cinematic, so that you can just have fight. You don't have like karate and boxing or whatever. You just have fight, and then that you can do all the fighting. Any kind of fighting you want, you can do wrestling. You can do boxing, dirty fighting. Shoot is shooting all of the things. You can shoot anything if you have shoot. So Fate's skill system is broad to be cinematic. I'm adding more skills in so that it's a little bit less cinematic, and I'm going to use specialization to be a little bit less cinematic again. But I'm still trying to sort of keep in the spirit of broader skills for the players. And then for the factions, I want to imagine things you could send your cell off to do, or things that cells would do against other cells, factions against other factions. I think that stealth is I think it is both. So stealth should be both, because if you send your cell to go and infiltrate something, if you send your faction to infiltrate another faction, they'd have to use stealth to do that, versus the faction's surveillance, right? So like if you send your faction off to go and try to infiltrate, sneak in the middle of the night while you're doing something else, or whatever, like a Nazi outpost, then you would have your faction roll its stealth versus the outpost's surveillance, let's say. So there are some skills that would be on both. Some I've renamed. So rather than shoot, I've said I've taken shoot and fight, and I've removed them for the faction. I'm just calling them assault. I'm not sure there should be any overlap between character and faction skills if they aren't just representations of NPCs. Espionage versus surveillance. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. I see what you're saying. Okay. So all right, let's see. So right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We have 16 faction skills, and we want there to be no overlap between player skills and faction skills. So knowledge right now is taking the place of academic, so that's fine. We can say espionage. Or do we want it to be espionage? What's the word? There's a word I'm looking for. I know, yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. So we are saying players have skills, but they gain advantage by using faction skills to get those extra things to do a mission. So no, what I'm saying is players are a member of a faction, and as a player, a player cannot attack an entire faction by themselves. Like, you cannot attack the Nazis in Paris, or like the first district of, like, that doesn't make any sense. You could attack specific people in that particular group, but you cannot attack the faction itself. So if you want to weaken the faction, which has we have a question that's got to come up. So hold on. I see factions being used in two different ways. One, to assault other factions and to defend against other factions, as representation of faction level conflict. But also, you should be able to call on your faction to do things or get things for you. So, for example, if your faction has knowledge of 2, then you might be able to make a roll. You should be able to make a roll against your faction skills to see, like, hey, what does our particular faction is? We're I don't know. We're all like if you're going to run the White Rose, which is a German resistance movement based out of Munich, and they were all college students, I would imagine their knowledge would be high. They might have a knowledge of 2, let's say. And so you should be able to roll against your faction knowledge skill to know some things. If you destroy their Panzerfabrik without any collaterals, wouldn't it be attack? So here's what I'm saying. Second OBS, I think that would actually be a space. No, I think what I would say is that there are different ways to initiate faction attacks. You can have the players do it in a mission that they play out in the game itself, which would then also trigger a faction attack. They do the thing, and actually I would say that would just be a successful attack, right? So it's like you can drill into the level of what's the word? You can drill into the level of meta or micro. So the players themselves could do a mission where they want to sneak into a factory and destroy it with some sabotage, and then they do, and that then also would count as a basically you have to justify a faction attack. You can use your skills as players, which are probably going to be better than the faction skills, and then that would count as a successful attack. Or you can have your faction do it on its own when you're doing something else, which could then, you would use the faction skills for that. So you can either do, Cauldrick says, my head sees players as squad level actions with factions being the entire platoon coming to back up support. Yes. So, and you can, there's a permeability of it, in that you can use your faction skills to help you out, but you can also have the faction do stuff on your own. You can, but that's a little bit, more dangerous. But I think it would give you, and then you can have, so you can do, and then you would also you would probably be doing player missions in order to sort of bump up your faction until you can get your faction doing some of these things on their own, because your faction's still pretty weak at the beginning. But also I would have the faction, if, for example, let's say that the Nazis want to find our heroes, it will be the faction that will go up against them, against their faction. So if they're trying to sort of find them, it would be like, okay, they're doing a sweep of your area. They're going to use their surveillance against your faction, right? So because it's not just individuals, it's also the faction itself. So this becomes a sort of interesting question about what kind of backup the faction can get them. So knowledge, espionage, allies, construction, I'm going to get rid of decoy as a skill. Demolitions is a skill the players have, so we'll get rid of demolitions. Maneuver is their ability to move around. I suppose we'll delete electronics. Research. They can't go head to head. Well, how would you as an individual go up against all of the Nazis in France. Like, that seems really hard to do. You could go up against this one particular target, but going up against the large group doesn't seem really doable. But you want some way to weaken the Nazis in France as a whole, right? You want to be able to, they do it by being Superman. Like, you want to be able to sort of weaken the Nazis' hold in France so that when D-Day comes, it'll be easier for the big army faction to come and sort of like take them down. So I would imagine that. Let's say research, surveillance, security, propaganda, assault, evasion, rally. Mobility. That's good. I like it. Mobility. Okay, so I've got right now knowledge. We'll think about this. Oh yeah, I see the cell doing mega hit and run missions, blow a bridge, a munitions factory or a small dam that powers mills, screwing with communications, right? And all those things would, so basically what I'm thinking is if they blow up a bridge, if there's no faction mechanic, all they did was just blow up a bridge, right? Like, yay, they blew up a bridge. That's great. But blowing up this bridge is going to also send stress to the faction, and you can then lessen on a meta level, right? So the players can do these regular missions themselves, but the missions, I want the missions to have some kind of larger impact. So they blow up that bridge, and if you did not have if you didn't have some kind of faction mechanic, so then what? But now you blowing up this bridge will do harm to the overall faction, and right, and yeah, right. So there's a way in which what I'm thinking is that this will allow them to this will allow them to harm the opposition on a large level. Okay, but context is resistance versus Nazis, and in it nested agendas of factions with their squads and individuals. Firing squads of local officials. Oh, all those things will certainly happen. Resistance versus Nazis, also versus Vichy as well. And there'll be probably different cells as well. And in it, nested agendas of factions with their squads and individuals. Right, and each squad, each faction will have its own goals, its own agendas. Right, I'm looking at these skills. Knowledge and do we need knowledge and research as separate skills? Let's just go with research. So espionage, allies, construction, mobility, research, surveillance, security, propaganda, resources, which probably needs a new name, assault, evasion, rally. Research can be technical or historic. Yeah, again, these are really broad skills because Fate goes super, super broad. Resources is going to need a different name. No, I said evasion, Krellin, not invasion. Sorry, evasion. We'll call resources support. We'll call it support. If we call it support, that would probably work, right? No, I was thinking of mobility and evasion as being different. In terms of mobility being the ability to get to places. Right, so I'm thinking mobility is like if you need your faction to sort of get through the Pyrenees or make it through the forests and the woods, that's your mobility, your ability to get here on time. Like if there's a chase, right? If you're both trying to sort of get someplace before some other place, you'd use mobility. And then evasion would be basically your defense against being assaulted or surveilled. Right, so I'm thinking it's a different way. Like if they're coming at you, you might be able to use evasion to sort of defend. Yeah, and mobility might also be able to move out supplies. Exactly. Right. It's your support could be logistics. Defense. Why not? This is a good question. I think my one concern, how well can you hide in plain sight as well as move discreetly and deflect suspicion? Okay. We've got a lot of ideas. I'm liking them. I want to sort of tease them out. So a couple of things. There should be a skill that can increase the stress boxes for your 3 stress boxes we have. We have reputation, personnel, and assets. Support's again more like a service, not against another faction thing. I still don't get why faction skills have to be against other factions and not just skills also for the other factions and individuals. They're not just, they can also be things that you can use. So for example, research, right? Like mobility could be, well, skills are things you're doing, right? So you want to, so what you want is, if we had the factions have the exact same skills as the players, they had fight, they had shoot, they had deceive, they had drive. If they have the exact same skills, that doesn't feel that feels like a person, right? So if you're at the, now I think that you should be able to, so for example, support, you should be able to call on your faction for support. Like individuals should be able to interface with their factions, right? So there should be skills that individuals can't interface with. Like maybe they need to figure out if their faction might have some information so they could roll their faction skill. They might want to find out if their faction can support them, so they could roll support skill if the faction can get them some stuff. So I think that the players should be able to interact with their faction skills, even though they're low, until they get better at them. I would again mention the healing skill of the faction, which can be just stronger, faster than what the player group can do in the field. Second, OB, command control communication. So one of the things, second Bob's, is that it's tricky because Fate doesn't have health, right? They don't actually have hit points. So what you have are stress tracks. Yeah. Logistics, communications, logistics. Add row below. Logistics, maybe? I'll think about that. Now, what's interesting though, Krellin, is that Fate doesn't have a medicine skill by what's the word? By canon. There is no medicine skill. Achtung Cthulhu adds one, and I will. And basically you have to do something that will justify starting the recovery. Medicine doesn't actually heal it, but it allows you to start the recovery process, right? So because Laura's science, that is fair. Faction strategic and players tactical. Yes, Coldrake. Faction is strategic and players tactical, and also some light support. So perhaps faction support is a representation of both the size as well as the diversity of the abilities as well as the backgrounds of the entire faction. A small support score means you have very few people with a narrow range of abilities, so they're less likely people to help you where you can't help yourself. Right. A large support score means you can use your contacts. Right. So that it's right now that is being so we're using the stress boxes to represent how large a person's these things are for a person, as well as their skills in some ways, right? So reputation, personnel, and assets are their stress boxes, and they start with 2 apiece. And if they have really good skills, they can add more of those stress boxes. And right, so the size of your faction is represented by your skill ranks and your stress boxes. And if you have no skills, then you have nothing. Then you're done. And these are all different ways in which they can support you. How does a faction? They gain. It's not support because it's not. It's all. So what happens is, how big your faction is and how strong your faction is based on what your skills are. Everyone's going to start. The resistance will start with 3 skills, 2 level 1s and 1 level 2, and they get to choose what those skills are. And they can increase their skills. And if they increase their skills and their skills get bigger, which represents their faction being bigger, having more stuff, being more powerful, being able to help them more. And you increase your skills in Fate by having a milestone, a major milestone. And the major milestones will work. In this one, the factions will have a goal that the players will select. If it's a minor goal, then they'll get if they fulfill their goal, which could be, for example, recruiting 10 new members, whatever goal they want, or it could be assassinating this one person. Whatever is their faction goal, they have a goal for their faction. And then when they succeed in their faction goal, that's a major milestone, so their faction can now increase a skill or gain a new skill, which then makes their faction more powerful and more able to help them. So we're going to be basically measuring the strength and power of the faction through their skills. So will a faction be totally NPC driven by you? No, the faction will be driven by them. They will control their faction. They will control their faction. I'll control the NPC factions, but they will control their own. They will control their own faction. If they're NPCs, I can run them for them, but they will control their own faction. They will choose what those skills are for their faction. They will decide what their goals are for their faction, what their faction is, what their faction's aspects are. They will use their faction to do things. They will decide what they want to do with their faction. It will be all up to them to decide what they want to do. So that's up to them. They get to do what they want. They get to decide what they want to do with their faction, and they can. So, so will the factions? So Vichy, Germans, Nazis, SS. It's one against many. Well, if you were resistance cell, but there are also perhaps other factions that they might want to make contact with to sort of have a better ally score. Right, sort of connect. But of course, the more allies you have, right, the more you can be. That can be bad. But like there were a lot of factions, and maybe they can make allies with some factions as well. So like the Nazis will be and probably like the local Nazis, the SS will be a faction, the Vichy will be a faction, and there might be political factions versus military factions. Right, yeah, but that's. When you're this small resistance cell, it's one against many, and you have to decide where you want to sort of put your energy. How do you want to do? How do you want to do this? Like, what do you want to do? How do you want to go about this? And I imagine they can. I think there should be a way to be able to get a bonus from these faction skills to something that they're doing. I think that should be possible. So let me see. We have espionage. No, we should call that intelligence. We'll call not espionage, we'll call it intelligence. No, we'll call it espionage. And then research will be intelligence. Having more allies means having more liabilities, yes. Who knows if this other cell you just learned about has a mole in its ranks? What if the cell is captured and now will become afraid about your group, etc., etc.? How much do you do locally, bring a shitstorm down on your village, or going out there to redirect the potential blowback without screwing other cells? Right, like I think these will all be challenges. And do you want your cell to be bigger? So, all right, these are the faction skills I have right now. Tell me what you think. If there's something I'm missing, and there's a thing we have to do to think about this. So espionage, allies, construction, mobility. Maybe we don't need construction, but maybe we don't need construction. Think about it. But maybe we do. Espionage, allies, construction, mobility. But I also feel like factions could also be things like that are not necessarily enemies. They could be things like the rail lines could be a faction. Heavy industry or factories could be a faction, right? There could be non-bad guy factions that they also want to mess up, right? They also want to debilitate. Right, so there could be that, right? So the factions doesn't just have to be Vichy and the Nazis. It could also be food production, war production. You know, we could have other factions that they could then be attacking, right? All right. Espionage, allies, construction, mobility, intelligence, surveillance, security, propaganda, assault. We'll say evasion we have right now. I don't know. We're going to think about that. Rally, logistics. The grape growing industry, if that goes the French World Revolt, it might. Larger cells are effective at smuggling, information gathering, abduction, or sowing coordinated chaos. Small cells are effective at sabotage and circular assassination. Right. So some way to sort of think about that. Factions can maybe topologically split into military, espionage, support, civil, bigger cells for bigger objective goals, because they'll have better skills. So I don't know if these are all the right skill sets at the moment. Yeah. And of course, those would be very second OBS. That would be really large skills, large factions. Like it could be. Because you probably can't just say the Nazis. That's really way too big. But you could say something like Nazi military, Nazi intel, Nazi logistics, right? Like you could have different Nazi supply. For players, they should have a very small skill set until they learn what new skills they need to do future missions. Well, I think they can see what the list is, but they're only going to have 3 skills total, right? They're only going to have 3, and they're going to be really small, little skills. And so they're going to know that they're not particularly great at a bunch of things. And if they want to, they need to do future missions. To get new skills, they have to meet their goals, right? They have to meet their missions to sort of be able to sort of up their faction. And yeah, so the players will increase their factions by doing missions. that they will decide, and they decide what they want to do. Like, I will not tell them what they have to do. If they're like, we want to be better at this. Would factions starting out have only 3 skills and then strive to get? Yes, that is correct. You would start with 3. Like, now the Nazis are gonna have way more skills than that, and they'll be really high level because they're the Nazis and they're very powerful. But the resistance will only have 3, and they'll have to decide which of the 3 do they want, and decide what makes sense for them. So the 3 stress boxes are reputation, personnel, and assets. So the question is, what are the skills, the faction skills, that will allow them to increase those stress boxes? For reputation, I think propaganda would be the skill that would be tied to reputation. For personnel, rally. I think rally is the skill for personnel, because you can use rally to increase morale, to try to get more people. Rally. Success failure rate. Ask that as a more detailed question. And then for assets, we would go with security, or either security or logistics. I'm thinking. Oh. And personnel could also be allies. To motivate personal or gain personnel, the overall success failure rate would color the thought of wanting to do that to or run away from it altogether. I need more thought. I need kind of under recruiting. Yeah, because you could rally to recruit. So we've got 2 skills that could feed into personnel, allies, and rally. We have 2 that could feed into assets, security and logistics. And we have currently 1 that would feed into propaganda, and that would be reputation. That would be propaganda. And I think there should be something else. I think there should be potentially two skills that could fit into each one. So propaganda would allow people to think better about you, but then something that would allow you to be less visible? Maybe espionage? Yeah, sure, we'll go with that. But here's my question. Can espionage be given a better name? Probably not. Reputation, mythology. That's under propaganda. So we have 2 skills that can add bonuses. If Coldrick, that would be propaganda. Tradecraft. Fate skills are often things like covert, if you prefer that to espionage. Covert. covert? Do I like that better? Let's try covert as, yeah. So then let's think about attacking and defending those three stress boxes. What you can use to attack and defend against them. So for reputation, you can attack with let me clear that. So you should be able to attack with propaganda, somebody's reputation. You should be able to attack. I think that's what you would do, right? Covert, allies, construction. We maybe don't need construction because that's probably under logistics. So let's get rid of construction, delete row. So we've got covert, allies, mobility, intelligence, surveillance. What if we change covert to be counter intel? No, we're gonna keep covert. Hello, Atomica. All right, so we can attack reputation with propaganda. So right now our current skill list is covert, which is staying under the radar and counterintelligence, allies, mobility, intelligence, surveillance, security, propaganda, assault, evasion, rally, and logistics. Those are currently our skills. Bag and burn, demo, birdwatcher in place of spy, black ops versus regular ops. Those feel like exciting for personal skills rather than faction skills. They seem like exciting names for those. So, all right, reputation. Attacking reputation would be propaganda, I think. I don't think any of those other things would. Yeah, no. But to defend against reputation, I think you'd also use propaganda. I think you could also use covert. Because reputation is both heat as well as like how much people are looking at you, as well as how much people like you. So I think you could use covert to try to sort of evade that steam. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. But that would be propaganda, I think, right? So then for personnel, you could attack not openly acknowledged or displayed, right? So I think you could use covert to try to avoid a propaganda attack against you. So personnel, which are the people you have, you could defend, you could attack personnel with an assault. I think you could. You could, but now remember, assault is also morale. So personnel, so reputation is how people like you, how people feel, how the populace feels about you, and how much heat you're under. Personnel is how big, how many personnel you have, and also what their morale is. And then assets are money, supplies, logistics. Yeah. So assault can attack people. I think propaganda can attack people. I think yes. I think that you can defend with rally. I think you can defend with evasion. I have a question about allies, whether they can attack or defend. I feel like... And then assets, I think you attack with assault. You defend with mobility. Oh, no. I don't think we need mobility and evasion. That makes no sense. We don't need them both. I think you're right. I think that Krellin is right that we don't need both mobility and evasion. Defend your assets. So I just got rid of evasion and I left it at mobility. So, yeah. MMK Star, I'm supposed to be making a D&D campaign for my family, and instead I'm watching Trooper work on his RP campaign. Hey, this is how I get the work done, right? All right, so right now, let's see. I want to make sure we've got the actual actions covered so that we know we can do them. So your personnel, your reputation is increased by covert and propaganda. If you want to attack reputation, you attack it with propaganda. And if you want to attack someone's reputation, i.e., and that propaganda will make people dislike them more. If you want to give them more heat, what about, here's an idea, right? It's if we think about, I'm going to write this down so I don't forget it. Reputation is both how much heat and general support. We got to figure out whether or not, and then personnel is how many and what morale, and then assets are physical, monetary, physical and monetary, right? Okay. But I feel like that's propaganda. Caldrake, give me an example of ruining someone's reputation that is not using propaganda. Everybody needs to think about what covert means. So for me, if somebody is... So I'm thinking about surveillance as being them trying to find you and to see you and get you. And you use covert to not be seen and not be got. Right? So that is you... so I feel like surveillance you use to attack against personnel and assets. And you defend, use covert to defend personnel, and security to defend assets. Let's see. Laying false evidence, which can get someone into hot water. I think that's propaganda, though. Sneaking, right? Yes, it can go fluidly from the media like propaganda to change some day in the office, but I think that would also be propaganda because you're making yeah. So I'm thinking that covert is not like if I take a piece of propaganda and I sneakily put it in your room versus I just put it in your room, I don't think of that as being a difference between covert and propaganda. I'm thinking about covert as a way to if somebody's trying to find your cell, they're using spy catchers to try to find your cell, that you would use covert, or to find the people, to covert to defend against that. Let's changing orders to ruin someone's private reputation as opposed to their public. I don't think that propaganda is well, that would, if you're talking about a person, I think that would be a person versus person attack versus a faction attack. Like if you're going for like an individual person, that's not, I don't think that's a faction attack, because that's like, I'm going to go and ruin, like if there's like the head of the Gestapo and I want to ruin the head of the Gestapo, then you'd be that person, you're attacking that person themselves, and then you'd be attacking that one person. So that'd be like a that's not a faction attack, I don't think. Like making officers in a shipment to the wrong city to upset their superiors, which would be attacking the officer, right? So because right now we're still on faction level, and now if you're able to ruin that officer, that could then be justify an attack on the assets or the allies of that group. Would attack the personnel. Would a faction attack be like the flyers dropped in Vietnam saying some Hollywood star was back home having sex with her girlfriend is psychological warfare? Yes. Right, so propaganda is both propaganda in that classic sense, but also psychological warfare. Also, I could use, for example, I think an example of propaganda, we could call this psychological warfare if you like, versus propaganda, if you feel like that would be better. Somebody's watching me, and I have no privacy. Whoa, I always feel that somebody's watching me. Tell me, is it just a dream? Thank you, in How to Cuddle Crows. How are you? You have the creepiest thing. But I actually like propaganda better, because not all factions will be military factions. Right, the newspaper would also be a faction. Like media would be a faction, or the theater would be a faction. Maybe also schools would be a faction. And I feel like propaganda is a little bit more open than psychological warfare. What is the creepiest thing, Atomica? Hitler dresses up at the Reichstag. So I think that you can, so for example, I think when I'm thinking about these propaganda attacks, my dad kept a propaganda booklet we used to drop to the North Vietnamese. It's literally titled something like The Holy Christian Path to Democracy, and it's in English and Vietnamese. Oh, yeah, and the North Koreans would drop propaganda flyers all over South Korea too. So creepy. So another thing that would be to attack your reputation, I could imagine Nazis. Let's say there was a village that was helping out, that had harbored or given some supplies, helped out the resistance. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't at all. Maybe the resistance attacked some Nazis in this area. And so the Nazis, as they would do, they walked into a village, they rounded up some people, they shot them, just regular villagers, not resistance members, and they said, we're shooting anybody who helps the resistance in any way, and like we're shooting them because of you. And that could be an attack against, right, we're doing this because that could be an attack against someone's reputation, right? That could be a way to sort of make people dislike or say the resistance did this thing, the resistance blew up your home, right? The main difference in the example is, in my opinion, one is like printing flyers or having control of a newspaper, or the Volksempfänger, and the other is hand attacking their reputation while bringing in a spy to change some data or place of dirt in someone. Later would be more espionage act, less propaganda act. Both would attack reputation. So maybe the question should not be, does it attack reputation, but how does it do that? But I think the question is, are you attacking a person or a faction. All of the examples I'm seeing so far for using covert are to attack a person, right? Like I go in and I mess up the files to make this person look bad, and the person's not a faction. So I don't know about that. We're gonna have to come back to covert as to what we want that to be exactly. Or you can tell us where the runners are, or we will rape and pillage your family and home, right? And that would be so reputation is both how people think of you as a faction, and how much heat you're getting as a faction. So it seems to me that how many attacks we might need some, but I think that might be yeah. How many attacks against a person turns into an attack against the faction? I think that's where you get the bleed from player to faction, right? So that the players can, and if the Lord, see, here's the thing: if the players themselves are attacking the Lord Commander, the players are using player skills to attack another character, and that then justifies an attack against the faction. So you can attack a faction in two different ways. You can do just meta and have the faction roll against the other faction, or you can drill down on the strategic level and say, okay, I want to actually have our cell, using our better skills and fate points, do an attack against the Lord Commander, and that will be that will justify the attack. And what they could, they could just shoot him in the head and say that's an attack against personnel. You could, right. So like this, so the way in which the players are able to use to make their own missions, which will then allow them to justify an attack against that faction, using one of their skills. So that's the thing, right? You can do it in one of two ways. You can use your faction to do things behind the scenes that do not involve your player characters when your player characters are doing other stuff. Like maybe you need a distraction, you need some help. Or you can have the players do their own attack and use that as a justify to attack the faction. So you're like, I'm going to attack the Lord Commander. And that is not faction versus faction. That's individual versus individual, which you can then use to justify an attack against the faction. So like you can scale up, right? So if we do a number of assaults, right, we can then yeah, so there's always a relationship, right? There's a relationship between the individual characters and the factions. So that this way, because what I don't want is the players to kill the Lord Commander, to blow up bridges, to do all of this stuff and have it mean nothing in the war. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't actually do anything because there is no faction to be assaulted. By having a faction, the players are then able to also attack the faction through personal level fights. Can player actions screw their standing with their own faction? Can player actions screw their standing with their own faction? It's a very good question. This feels like a very artificial distinction. I see that the faction needs unique skills, but whether or not they or the players use them against an individual faction is both possible and melt together at some point anyway. I mean, second, OBS, what we could do is just not have factions, right? We could just not have factions at all. And then hitting the right target at the wrong time or hitting someone that the higher-ups want in place for a future action. Yeah. I the thing is, I'm feeling Kuldrak is that they are their own faction, but it would. I think if they mess up, it would. But see, second OBS, I don't. It seems like you're arguing against factions totally. So I think that with your model, there would be no factions. Players just do everything on their own, and so then you don't need factions, right? If there's no distinction between faction and player, then you don't need factions. So they're not useful. If there's no distinction between them, then there's no point in having them, because they don't mean anything. So that would be the thing. So I'm taking your comments as an argument to get rid of factions completely. No, but I think so. If there's no distinction between a player or a faction, then you don't need factions. And if the skills, if the no, but see, if the thing is, you're also arguing for the factions to have the exact same skills as the players, in which case you don't need factions again. The players can just use their own skills. There's no need to have a faction if the faction is just the player. Yeah, you're covert. You undermine their paperwork, mix up orders, scramble to tap radio communications, maybe undermine the defenses, steal supplies. Yeah. I think that also covert could be. Yeah, like those are not necessarily attacking reputation. That could be attacking their logistics. Every cell needs the larger group backup support. So it's tricky because every cell needs the larger group backup support. So if you're working completely away, then you're kind of small. This is where allies could come in, but yeah. So I think. Maybe we just don't do factions at all. If there should be no distinction between the skills between a faction and a player, then there's no need to have a faction. But there are they always are, the discussion about if they could not do that because it's a person and not felt strange. So then I think that we just don't have factions, right? I think that's it. If a distinction doesn't feel right, then we just don't have factions. Players don't have a propaganda skill, right? So players don't have a propaganda skill. They have forgery. They have things like that. This is true, Krillin. So I'm thinking about maybe just ditching the whole thing and not doing it in Fate at all. Yeah. So maybe I ditch the whole thing and just don't do it in Fate at all. Yeah. Maybe that's what I do. I guess I see it as a solo cell would be just ranging the countryside, hitting targets of opportunity, blind to the larger picture, versus having some connections to a line of resistance command, which can point the weapon in the appropriate direction. Here's the thing: if it doesn't make sense to everybody in chat, then it doesn't make sense to do it, right? I mean, that's the thing. The easy thing would just be do it in GURPS, where I don't have to deal with any of that at all. None of that becomes an issue in any way. I just do it in GURPS, and it's a little crunchier, but then I don't have to worry about factions. It's a little sad because I really like the idea of factions. They were kind of exciting to me, but if they don't make any sense, then maybe I just do it in GURPS. I also am a little sad because I do not like the GURPS character sheet on Roll20. I don't think it's very good. I think it makes GURPS character sheets look way too confusing, and I don't like it. It makes sense to me. Faction skills are faction things. If you want to apply them to individual level, that's a stunt. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A stunt. Hmm. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Mm-hmm. The faction cannot operate on an individual level without a stunt. They just aren't designed that way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Me Too faction skills should just not artificially distinguish if they're applied against individual factions. Yeah, but they have to have a there has to be a distinguish between them. And if there's no distinguishing between faction skills and player skills, then there doesn't need to be a distinguish between factions and players. That's all I'm saying. Is if there's no distinction between, if you're arguing that there shouldn't be a distinction between the skills, then I don't think then I should just use GURPS. Really, it just sounds like factions become another player character. I'm not sure how factions identified groups out there are part of the individual play. A designed in the Fate system. See, covert, by the way, for me would be used for smuggling, for think about covert a little bit. Well, the thing is, I mean, I can just do this whole thing I can just do the whole thing in GURPS and not have factions at all. Like that is a thing that is very doable. Yeah. I just think. See, for me, it makes sense, right? For me, it makes sense. But if it doesn't make sense for you, then maybe I should just do this in GURPS. Oh, I need to change that, by the way. I need to change that. Nightbot. Bot. That's not how you spell Nightbot. Oops, that's also not how you spell Nightbot. There we go. So, right, it makes sense to me in the sense that yeah. So well, the thing is, for me, like you've got. So if you have 3 stress bars, you need to be able to have ways to attack those stress bars and defend those stress bars in the faction, right? So if you're gonna have faction versus faction conflict, a faction needs to be able to attack a faction's reputation, a faction's personnel, and a faction's assets. And a faction has to be able to defend their reputation, personnel, and assets. So the skills that they have to be able to have skills that can allow them to both attack and defend those 3 faction bars, right? So, hey Toad. A cell would be a type of faction, and counter ops work in intelligence, and a cell would be a type of faction, and counter ops work in intelligence cells as well. So, right, it's important that there be faction skills that can attack those stress bars as well as defend those stress bars, so that those 2 factions can go against each other on that meta level. Those things have to be working. Skills don't map to stress tracks directly. You can inflict mental stress with fight. But I have to be able to think, how could one do this? If I cannot think of a way to do it, then there's a skill missing. Maybe not mirrors of each other, but each have complementary skills based on their resources. I have some ideas, but I would have to type them in longer form than what I'd want to in chat. So I want a skill that will add stress boxes, and I have that listed out. And there has to be ways for factions to attack and defend those things. And there can be multiple ways to do it, but there at least has to be one, right? If I cannot think of a way that a person would defend their assets, then the players won't be able to do so, and that would be right a problem. And so I'm thinking about what are the ways in which someone could defend their assets, defend their reputation, defend their personnel. What ways would they attack? And if I can't think of those in the faction skills, then we're missing a skill, right? Or we might have too many skills. Like, so for example, maybe we don't need covert at all as a skill. Maybe that is not a skill that is useful for us to have. Maybe we don't need it. Maybe it needs to be renamed. And then security, physical, and intel. Physical is not a skill. Physical is not a skill. We're talking skills at the moment. And the relationship between the individual players and their faction is that they can... Oh, flavors of security. We have intelligence as a skill. We have intelligence as a faction skill and also security as a faction skill. So we have both of those already. And the relationship between the players and the factions, it's just like in mass combat in GURPS, right? You create your units, and your units have people in them. And you can just have unit-to-unit combat, or you can drill down and actually have your player characters do some one-on-one combats, which then can impact that larger group-to-group conflict. So players can do missions which can justify an attack against another faction using their skills against other player character level skills. Or they can use their faction skills if they don't want to personally be involved, right? So, for example, let's say there's a logistics faction that has a bunch of assets, and but you want to be able to sort of use intelligence, but I wouldn't want to put them together. If they were just one skill, intelligence and security, if they were just one skill, I wouldn't want them to be one skill. Right now they're two separate skills, and I think that's good because you could use. Oh, thank you, Jer. Because if you use intel as if you have them separate, then you can have your players use intel to gather information, which has nothing to do with security, right? Sort of, or to know what information they might already have. So you use so basically the way it would happen is, let's say you have do we need a sabotage skill? This, okay, so how do you, let's say that there's a faction, and let's say that faction is the German military. And the German military is covert. Thank you, Krellin. Should we just call it sabotage? No, I like covert better. I think I like it better. I think I like covert. I'm going to put sabotage. Sabotage. I'm going to put sabotage here, just so I can remember that it's there. Sabotage. All right. So let's say there's an enemy faction, and that enemy faction has got assets of. Let's say the enemy. Let's say there's a faction that you're wanting to deal with, and that faction is. We're going to call this. Yeah, we're going to call this sabotage. Maybe we'll see. So there's a faction, and let's say the faction is the rail system. Let's call it the rail system. Let's say that is a faction. It is the rail system. Or transportation. Let's say transportation is the faction, and transportation involves Galdrake. Other factions Intel cover espionage, does other things. It's really hard not to be too precise, not too broad, and still cover all the factions somehow. Yeah, so let's say transportation is a faction, and that represents all of the transportation workers and how we think about the transportation and also its assets. So it's got reputation, it's got personnel, and it's got assets, let's say. And this is not a military thing. This is just like civilian transportation. That is a faction. And but we know that the Germans are using the transportation faction to move troops and all sorts of stuff, and we don't like it. So our players decide that they want to hamper the faction, the transportation faction. They want to sort of do that. How do they do this? There are two different ways to do it. Way one is have their faction go against the other faction just on a faction-to-faction level. Their particular resistance cell, however, is very small, has only 3 skills, 1 out of 2 and 2 out of 1. And let's say this is our, let's say that our troop has as its skills, yeah, well, you can make Toad. You can make it up at the moment. You can decide what you want it, how you want to. It's not fixed. You can sort of decide how you want to do that. So let's say our burlesque troop has 2 in propaganda, 1 in intelligence. Do I want intelligence and surveillance to be separate? That's a question. Do I want intelligence and surveillance to be separate? I think I do not. I think I want them to be this. I think they're the same thing. So we'll call this intelligence. All right, so they have, let's say they have 2 in propaganda, 1 in intelligence, and 1 in... Yeah, so I'm combining them into 1. So then they have, let's say, so our current skill list is either covert or sabotage, allies, mobility, intelligence, security, propaganda, assault, rally, logistics. Oh no! I'm gonna in like just a few seconds. I want to get this example so you can see what I'm saying. And if you don't see what I'm saying, then I will scratch this and go GURPS. So there's logistics. There's a logistics faction, and they've got security, and they've got all their skills. The players want to attack the transportation faction, and there are 2 ways to do this. 1, they can have their faction as a whole. Ooh, Volpez. They can have their faction attack that other faction. Since their skills are 2 in propaganda, 1 in intelligence, and 1 in let's say sabotage, they can use their one to go up against that faction. Because they're so small, they're going to be rolling at a +1 against that transportation faction. They are probably not going to be successful. They're probably not going to be successful. Since their skills are so low and like their faction is still so weak, like they can do that faction versus faction only, but they're not great. We can still think, I still want to think about, yeah, they'd be lucky to shoot at 1 tire and 1 truck. Like that faction is not strong enough yet on its own to be able to do that. They could get better, but right now it's not so great. They could try to maybe do a couple of other faction actions, maybe to get some bonuses. I don't know. But what they could do instead of having the faction go against the faction, they could have the players run an actual mission, right? The players themselves could be like, okay, we as players are going to go into a mission where we're going to go and stage. We're going to try to find a railroad hub and destroy things and blow things up. Now, having their players do it means they have better skills than their faction does at the moment, which means their odds are better at succeeding at this mission, but also then their players are actually there, which means their players might get killed. Bad things can happen to their actual individual players because their players are putting themselves on the line. But if they then are successful in that mission, they would then inflict, right, damage. They'd be able to sort of they would be able to inflict damage against that faction instead of their faction, and that would then be a way to damage that transportation faction. So you can either have your faction do it on the side with maybe not as great chances, or you can do it, but then you are not. You are safe because your faction is doing it, right? Some NPCs. Or you can do it and do that yourself, but then put yourself on the line. So that's like the inflict rail faction damage, increase reputation, and improving skill set. But how high individual skills are capped at 3, capped at +3. That's the highest an individual skill can go. Normally it's +4, but because I'm wanting to be a little bit grittier, the most you can do is a +3. And I don't think that faction skills are going to be capped because, like, you can have an entire army and they would have huge numbers, and that would be really hard to take them down because they'd be massive. But if it doesn't make sense, I will just I'll just do GURPS and not have factions, and then it'll just fix it. So yeah, if it doesn't make sense, then I will scrap it and do GURPS. Although I just do not like the Roll20 GURPS character sheet. I think it's not very good, and it makes me really sad. Yeah. Massage it. I think we are just having to learn how factions and players still work in relation to each other in game action. All right, I'll think about it. But so that's the no, if the relationship between if having a distinction between factions and cells don't make between factions and players don't make sense, and I can just run this in GURPS. That's the thing. But I was just sort of saying that in my mind, the players have a choice between either having their faction attack the other faction with them not being there, which means they're not themselves in danger of being shot or killed or captured because they're safe, but their faction skills are really crappy, so that'll be hard. Or they can do it themselves and use their good skills and make that faction attack. The only problem then, it's symbolic, right? It's a symbolic faction attack. They are attacking one small thing, which then will be symbolic of a larger attack, but then they are themselves on the line. And they use their skills against, right? So like, for example, they would use their skills against actual other characters, right? They would be having to sort of like go up against in this one, like they're not attacking the entire infrastructure, they're attacking this one exchange box, and they would have to do that. And if they do that successfully, then there'll be, right, that attack that would bump up to the faction level. But then they themselves are actually in danger, right? Because they personally are there. So either you let it happen from your NPCs, your faction sort of more generically, which to begin with, it's not going to be very, very good, or you go in personally, which puts yourself at danger. I saw the idea I saw the idea a bit of interactive with the group on one hand, allowing strategic input by the PCs, and background events for the DM maybe. Like, while the PCs attack the factor, the DM rolls some other events in the background. Example, of faction versus faction action happens. Win or lose, this determines what the cell might have to do as the next mission. Faction A attacks Faction B result. Depends on the scope of the game you want to run. If it's a small personal story, no factions. If you want to tell a larger story, use factions. I want both, right? That's why I want there to be factions and individuals. I want the players to have to deal with their own personal issues, but also be working, being part of a larger struggle. So the thing is, second OBS, I will not be running the players' faction. The players decide what they want their factions to do. I won't be dictating what their factions do. Like, they have their agency to decide what they want their factions to do. If they want them to do anything, like that's up to them. So we blew up a food delivery truck outside of town. Faction, Paris just fell to the Nazis. Coldrake, right now their cell is their faction. There's no distinction at this moment between their cell and their faction. They control their cell is their faction at the moment. They are the same. The possible switch between small-scale individual combat situations in the broader view is not uncommon in some games, and I like the idea a lot. And GURPS Mass Combat does that as well, right? You just go back and forth. Yeah, so their cell, because right now they're a disconnected cell, they don't have they don't have a larger connection to start. They could get bigger though. Right, they could get bigger. They could also get the cell at the start is more than just the PCs. Yes, it depends. Krellin, I would say it depends on their... Well, I mean, they do have some personnel, so I suppose they would have a little bit. They'd have like a couple of people maybe, but it wouldn't be very big. It would be very, very small. And some of those non-PCs might be backup characters for the PCs if they die, right? So I'm imagining they should probably have some backup PCs in case they die. And the rest of the cell is probably those backup PCs, just the start. Now, I think it would also depend on how much if they put allies as their biggest skill, then they might actually have more people. Yeah, exactly, Krone. The burlesque group would have some stage hands, some other acts, which are probably backup PCs, right? Or maybe some connections out. The part of their learning curve is making connections to gain logistics and supplies and intel from other cells, from another cell. Yeah, that's right. Look at how Adam Koebel does for his Stars Without Number game. The faction turns are almost a totally separate game, but it does affect the player's story and vice versa. Yeah, Stars Without Number has a whole faction mechanic, as does, I think, Blades in the Dark, where there are factions that have like there's like, it's player turn, faction turn, player turn, faction turn. And I want to be a little bit more fluid. Like, I don't want there to be like necessarily player turn, faction turn, downtime, not downtime. I want it to be a little bit fluid based on what the players do. I want the players to have a lot more drive on that one. But even a basic faction is more than the PCs, yes, even if they have just the default boxes. Yes, I think that a basic faction is going to have some more people. How many more people will depend on if they've taken boxes in ally rally, that sort of thing, right? How they might be quite small, or they could be perhaps larger and a little bit looser, sort of depending. Okay, as long as the answer is yes, you should keep doing Fate with faction characters. Oh. And the thing is, having it as a faction that's a little bit bigger than the PCs means that there are PCs that can come in if somebody dies, if a player character dies or gets kidnapped. There's someone else who can kind of step in, and there are people that can sort of be doing things off in the background. Is faction level dictating the game action, or is cell layer the driving force, or is actual history deciding what level is going to happen each episode? Yes, and I can have guest stars, exactly, right? So the thing is, if the faction is bigger than just the PCs, how big is going to depend on how they build up. They could actually build up where it's actually much larger. They have a much larger network, which is pretty exciting, which would then represent like multiple cells, and so that's exciting. But is the faction level dictating the game action, or is the cell layer the driving force, or is actual history deciding what level is going to happen each episode? I don't think of that as fixed. I think it depends. I don't see that as very fixed. I see that as being very fluid, in the sense that the players all have goals. And some of those goals might be personal. In order to get those personal goals, they might need to do some larger things. They may not be interested in making their faction any larger, but then it'll be hard for them to make large-scale change. They can try. They can do that. So, like, I think it depends on what the players want to do. I think the players, and then also what happens in the moment. I think there's got to be something. Yes, why did they join the Resistance is one of the things that's going to be part of their character creation, right? So why they joined the Resistance is part of character creation. It's going to be one of their aspects, is going to be in there. So that's going to be built in to their aspects. The faction they can use fate points for faction level stuff. They can, yeah. Sorry, I'm not being articulate right now. I'm just thinking about how they can. I'm thinking about what other things their faction can get them. Like, what will motivate them to try to increase their faction. I'm hoping for it to be very complicated indeed, with players wanting to join the Resistance for revenge or to save someone, to have all sorts of like personal drama, and then also larger drama happening at the same time. Rissa, I'm just ending though. Welcome in. Also, Volpez, I'm going to sing "We're in the Money." Don't think I forgot. I did not forget. So basically, I think that there's a way in which I want something that makes them motivate them to improve their factions. I joined the Resistance maybe you joined the Resistance for the dental. So I feel like there should be some kind of a way. There should be some sort of a way for Resistance skills, for faction skills, to be able to help them. Yes. I'm going to think about how. Yes, Toad, that is good dental. I think that factions should be able to create advantages for the player characters. I'll remind you that you did not need to give direct motivation for the Night Witches to bend over backwards to save Anastassia. I didn't. That was all them. And I was like, well, all right. Can you extend the example or do another one? how a faction skill helps the players. Well, this is me just thinking about the idea. I think that you could, for example, well, first off, so your faction has an intelligence skill. You could say that you could see. This is where I want to think if it's a skill or if it's stunts. Yes, this is what I'm thinking, Krellin, that faction skills could create aspects the players later get to invoke. But I'm thinking, and Krellin, this is where I was going back to fate points. The Night Witches took off a life of its own thanks to Master Jimmy enemies into their players. Well, it's also about, like, you know, that session 0. So what if the faction does have fate points, but those fate points are used. I think, yes, exactly. This is what I'm thinking, Krellin. The faction's intelligence creates the aspect knows German movements, and then the players can invoke that for various skill bonuses on their own mission. This is exactly what I'm thinking. So it gives the players motivation to improve their faction. Everyone loves Anastasia. I thought they were going to go and murder her in the beginning. I wanted her to be a little bit murdery. So, but I think that there should be some sort of cost for using those faction skills. And I think, what do you think about, and then I'm going to go, because then it's 9:30, but what do you think about having to use, that there are faction fate points, and it was a three-way love fest. Just a three-way. What about having faction fate points that the players can use to use one of their skills? What do you think? I think I like that. That they have 2 fate points, and the fate points are basically actions. No need fate points flow freely. The PCs can use their own fate points. Hello, Celador Mythica. Exposure. Can use their own fate points. Exposure. Add a +1 to some skill. No, fate points give you a +2 to a skill. To a roll, actually. But here's my question. Krellin, do you really think they don't need... Okay. So Krellin, they use their own fate points to activate a faction skill. That's what we're thinking? All right. Here's I will say this as a compromise. One, I think I'm going to go with you. They use their own fate points to activate. If you want to give the factions fate points exclusive for faction, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking about the faction points being faction fate points exclusively for faction actions. They could just go out and watch a highway until a German truck goes by, or faction tells them a convo is yes. Factions give players use their points to invoke them. Yes. Factions. Okay. But I'm thinking about the usage of skills, because what I don't want is I don't want the players to just create advantage using their skills with no try to use the faction skills to create advantage willy-nilly nonstop, like just all along. So I was thinking that if they have to spend a fate point to do a faction action, that would not make factions OP. If factions have turns, or does a player watching the road enhance faction? by reporting about the highway schedules they observe over a given time. The players can't choose two factions on their turn. They can do faction things on faction turns. That makes sense, Krellin. So that's basically one. If they're invoking a faction over and over again, then the Nazis get to invoke their factions over and over and over. Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. And the Nazis do have more factions than them. That is true. They do. That would force the players to use their own points in individual cell play. Cellar says, I was thinking use or overuse of a faction makes it conspicuous and possibly risk exposure. The more bold and extended the resources, possibly compromising me. I was thinking about that too, Celador, thinking about the ways in which using your faction what if they use stress? What if taking actions costs stress for factions? Would that work? And they would clear one stress box per game as normal. But if you're playing Fate properly, and this is the only time I'm going to say something like that, players shouldn't be hesitating to use their Fate points, and they shouldn't be nervous about accepting compels to get them back. How long can they shoot out tires in the countryside where someone plots? Oh, yeah. I mean, talking to people is stressful, so yes. So this is interesting because I wonder about how freely flowing Fate points will be in a grittier game, right? So I think that'll be one of the questions I have. That if the grittier game is a little bit more conservative, they may not be flowing as freely as a more cinematic game where they've got more fate points. Negative things aren't really going to be too bad for them. They can like just take negatives all the time because it's not going to be so bad. So I just wonder if fate points will be going as freely. It's just my question. I don't know. They're going to start with 2 apiece. That's 8 total. Fate points should flow about as freely as the tokens did in that. Players will use fate points if they know there will be a chance to regain regen those points in a timely manner. But they only get them back by conceding, accepting a compel, which they may not want to do, or having hostile invocations. Yes, right. The higher consequences, yeah. As long as you have Anna hoarding them all. Yeah, maybe an and/or proposition is pretty good. A fate point or stress. Maybe that would be a way to go. Yeah. And the fate point is you investing personally, and the stress is you taxing your resources. And I'm also thinking that if we do that, then what I would say is the factions have 0 refresh, but the faction can earn fate points. Right? So the faction can earn fate points if there are negative compels against the faction or hostile invokes against the faction. So the faction can earn fate points. Faction fate points, which can be used by the faction for itself. I did like how you gave them out in Night Witches depending on their choices actions. Yeah. So yeah, I think what we'll do is refresh 0 for the faction, though they can earn fate points. To have factions, however, you have to spend to do. I think you should spend to do faction actions, and you spend either faction stress or player fate points. What do you think? because they're basically, in some ways, these skills are basically stunts in their own kind of a way. I mean, they're not exactly, but they're sort of stunts. That if you want allies to help you out, you're going to create advantage, right? To do that, either they spend a stress or they do a fate point. What do we think about that? How do we feel about players being able to make actions with their faction using either stress, representing the people who are not them, or their own fate points? Or the faction fate point if the faction itself has earned some. This is my current thought. Can players also trade stress for fate points? Ooh. Hmm. Ooh. Ooh. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like this idea. I will have not just the factions, but also the players can exchange stress for fate points. But here's my thought. I think then the player's refresh should be reduced to 1. What do we think about that? What do we think about player refresh being a 1? Because if player refresh is 1, I am making it harder to recover stress. I'm doing the slow stress, which is they recover 1 at the end of a scene. And they have to actually do things to recover the rest of the stress. And I think we're going to be doing a slide down. Yeah, I do like a good stress economy. Yeah, yeah. So what do we think? Do we think that we reduce their refresh to 1? That's the question. Or do you think they need 2? So if they take 3 stress, they have to get through 3 scenes without more stress to remove it all. No, because they can also do things to recover stress. Those are just the free re-stress recovers. They can also do things. So for example, if they are that's an at the table thing, right? Yeah. So they automatically recover 1 stress at the end of a scene, but if one of their stress, but they can, if they've got, say, physical stress, they could sleep, right? They could RP sleep or some kind of at the table RP thing that will help them recover another stress box. And I think they'd have to. How many scenes per session? I don't know. I don't know yet. I really can't say. I don't know. I don't know. Certainly more than 1. I would like 2 to 3 is what I would like. But you never know how the players go. The players may just RP some shenanigans. But I was hoping 2 or 3 maybe. Go find a bottle and relieve stress. Faction. What? Dropped. I don't know why I'm getting some drop frames here or there. It makes me crazy. Faction fate points would still be there. A short example of how they would apply in non-player faction actions. Maybe this triple. Also, what about the amount of fate point refill is depending on the success of the mission? No, fate point refill is not about success of the mission. It's set. Trivial problematic. I should learn the system first. Feels noobish to question this without proper knowledge. So fate is a meta game thing. Like it's not. It's a little bit out of game. So. Scenes per session is important to how much refresh there should be. Yes. Yeah. Yes. All right, 1 or 2 refresh is still a question in my mind. But I'm going to institute that not just factions can get stress for fate points, but also how close to the Night Witch's slow slide towards doom do you want to ride? Would blow to have lost all your points 90 minutes, or it wouldn't, because here's the thing, Coldrake, you can get fate points back. That's the thing about them. If you blew, and that is something I actually want them to have to sort of think about, right? You can get fate points back. You can lean into compels. You can get into trouble. You can have bad things happen to you, and then you get fate points back. So if you blew all of your fate points in the first 90 minutes, there are ways to get more fate points, but you have to not play it as safe, right? You have to, maybe you are a bit of a kleptomaniac and now you need to get in some trouble with some kleptomania, or you need to have some negative things happen to you, and then you'll get, because you can get them, right? You can rack up lots of fate points if you allow negative things to happen to you. So like you can, it's not like you can, that's the 2 are like, it's not like you only have those 2 and you only get the next session. You can get more. How close to the Night Witch's slow slide towards doom do you want to ride? Sniped 1 too many city officials. Yes, and if things come back to haunt you, then you'll get some fate points. So you can get them, right? You can get them through hostile invokes, through compels. So there are ways to get more fate points. Sniped 1 too many city officials. How close to Night Witch's slow slide towards doom do you want to ride? It's a good question. I want it to be harsh. The fate points allow them to do a lot of things. And was my fault that they just lined up Coldrake? It's true. Yeah. Refresh 2 with the ability to trade stress for fate points, and faction actions cost either stress or fate points. So faction actions are not free. They cost either stress or fate points, but they can do a bunch of things for you. Like they can create advantages. Yeah, I'm really torn between 1 and 2 on that refresh. That is something that I'm torn between. And I'm going to think on this. Yeah, and I'm good. And I think I want to rule that factions have to spend, if they trade stress in 1, 2, if you're not giving them access to faction level. Alternate 1 and 2 for rising or declining action, randomized for unexpectedness. Perhaps start with 2, and as time goes on, it falls to 1 due to the war. I had an idea. I had an idea. Everyone, I have an idea, and I think with this, I'm probably going to leave the stream after we talk about this a little bit. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? Okay. What if their refresh is tied to their faction in some way? So base level is a refresh of 1, but if they can build up their refresh, they can build up their faction, they get more of a refresh, which means they could have more stunts, which means they could have more things going on, right? They get more stuff because their faction has more supportive, is like bigger, is more impressive. So like the better their faction, the more refresh they have. So okay, I've got it. It's about the pyramid. It's good success. More refresh is a viable fate reward, and tying it to faction goals is perfect. And here's how we do it. We do it based on the skill pyramid, right? So the highest level you have in your faction skill is the number of refresh you have. So our faction is going to start with 1-2 level and then 2-1 level, which means they have a refresh of 1. If they're able to build up their faction, they can get a refresh of 3. If their faction gets attacked and knocked down by the Nazis and they get down to a refresh of 1, then they can go down to a refresh of 1. Yes, refreshes, or it could be high skill. I think it would be highest skill, just highest skill, so we can start them at a 2. But they could drop down, like they could be attacked and lose it. Which allows for rebuilding again. Yeah. Yes. Do they earn refresh for achieving faction objective? They don't earn refresh. They earn a milestone which allows them to increase their skills or change their skills. That's this people. This is it. This is it. Refresh equals highest faction skill. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. So this really integrates their faction with them. And this creates a potential ebb and flow of the faction being strong or weak depending on successes or failures. Exactly. And that is personal refresh. The faction itself has no refresh. But you have to use, and here's the thing, you have to use either fate points or stress, faction stress, to do faction actions. And if you build up your faction, you have a lot of fate points, which means you can do a lot of faction actions. So you can create advantages, you can overcome, you can do all of these things. You can have your faction attacking on the side, giving distractions. You can do all this stuff with your faction if you build up your faction. The more you build up your faction, the more fate points you have, which makes you all a little bit more badass, but lets you do more things with your faction. But there should be a negative. And I think the negative would be, still rolling that one. Your highest skill is exposure, basically, right? Your highest skill level is going to be some kind of penalty somehow. Like nothing like the worst ever, but your highest skill level is some kind of exposure. Yeah, right? You become obvious, you aggro attention somehow. Yeah, I'm gonna try to figure out something that is not too punishing. Tied to the number of faction aspects, because more aspects equals more compels. Oh. Hello. Not the most covert. Because more aspects equals more compels. Oh, I have an idea. Krellin, how about not just aspects in general, but trouble aspects? Yeah. How about if, because right now the faction has four aspects: concept, trouble, goal, and free. Right? So concept, trouble, goal, and free, so they can do whatever they want, which is probably something kind of positive for them. And that's one trouble. they currently have a 2 refresh. So what if trouble aspects of the faction equals refresh highest skill -1? Yeah. What about that? Trouble. Yeah, trouble aspects equals highest skill -1. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so this is now feeling very good to me. It's integrating the players into their faction in a way that I think you couldn't do in any other system. So the highest skill of your faction gives you your refresh, and -1 gives you your trouble aspects. And they always have a faction goal, which they can invoke, and it's good. Yes. Fate Train. It's so fine. So now I think at the moment we have 9 faction skills. Covert or sabotage, some kind of name for that. Allies, mobility, intelligence, security, propaganda, assault, rally, and logistics. Is there anything we want to rename, or... So I'm going to go through from the bottom up. Well, sabotage. So sabotage falls under covert. 9 feels good, which I think so too. It's what I would have aimed for. Basically, 1 for each stress track. One for each stress track for each stress track. Yes. So yes. Sabotage is not a player level skill. They've got tradecraft. They've got demolitions, actually. They've got demolitions, they've got tradecraft, they've got sneak, stealth. They have stealth, tradecraft, demolitions. So they've got a bunch of different skills that would go under there that would probably be higher up. So yeah, right. So they've got more. Basically, they're more fine detailed. Even though Fate is like they've got like 18 skills versus actually they probably have a little bit more than 18. I've expanded their skill list a little bit, so they're gonna have more than 18 skills. They're probably like 20 something, low 20s. Whereas they'll be just 9 for the faction. So like they get more detailed skills, well as the faction itself gets sort of larger ones. So logistics, just so we all are clear what these skills might mean, and then we're going. Logistics is, and remember, factions could be, and just to sort of put in our mind, factions are not just the resistance cell and the Nazis and the police. Factions are also things like the media, transportation systems, maybe even civilians could be a faction, right? Civilians could be a faction in and of themselves, right? Like, so there could be, right, a bunch of different things are your factions. Yeah, basically, right? Yeah, basically any other group can be a faction. And so I want the things that we have to be able to sort of be applicable. Religious institutions, exactly. Religious institutions would be a great faction. Allied forces would be a faction. Communists would be a faction. Like, I would imagine there'd be a bunch of different, maybe also German fifth columnists would be a faction. You know, all these, business, right? Business would be a faction. Intellectuals, like, so all these things would be, and actually your resistance cell could be a church. That could be your resistance cell. Can you be in multiple factions? I would say no, but I would say there's got to be a stunt you could get maybe to have an ally from a separate faction, right? You can probably ally with them in some way. I think that would probably be a stunt, right? Under, maybe it would be like a faction stunt. That's what I would think. You might have a faction stunt where your faction's allied with another faction. I'm going to write this down because I want to make sure I have it. Faction stunt, ally with another faction or faction favor, that sort of a thing. Yeah. So I want to make sure that we have a sense of what these skills do, these faction skills. Logistics is all of your stuff, right? So it's you don't want to direct attention back to yourself. No. So logistics will be your supplies, your stuff, right? So for a resistance cell, it might be if they have guns or if they have safe houses. All of that would be under logistics. But if you were a factory, if your business might be your factories, right? So yeah, and I think yeah, that's right. I think that civilians or intellectuals are factions as well. Well, but the factions are in conflict, right? Because if civilians are factions, you know the Nazis are attacking them, right? Like the Nazis are trying to, the Nazis will be doing faction actions against them to make them do things, right? To make them work faster, to get them to do what they want. So I'm thinking about faction stunts. An ally favors... favors. There's a thing I think you can do with faction stunts. And you can, I don't think you start with any faction stunts, but I think you can earn them. So I'm going to think about faction stunts because I think that'll be really interesting. So that's logistics. That makes sense. You can overcome, but pro-Nazi civilians can't be against you because you're making waves. Can be against you because you're making waves instead of ducking the head and hoping. Yeah, that's right. So you can actually have, right, but you might be fighting for the hearts and minds of these civilians as well. And fighting for the hearts and minds of factions. Fighting for the hearts and minds of factions. That's a thing. That's a thing. I should think about food. I feel like I'm gonna write this down. I did see that there was somebody in somewhere talked about favor. And I think we should think about that. Some kind of favor. Yeah. Some kind of way to get favor with your factions, perhaps. With other factions, like there should be some kind of, but that's probably aspects. Those are probably attaching aspects to people. Yes. Those are probably consequences. Right, so for example, you might make a faction move against the civilians in a positive way using propaganda. And if you are successful, you might be able to put a consequence on them where they say something like, the civilians think well of you, right? So you can actually have positive consequences in some kind of a way. Yes. Yes. That might seem strange, but like if you inflict a consequence on another faction, then you might be able to sort of put something like the civilians really like you, right? Or favorable towards the resistance as one of the consequences, which then could be invoked negatively by the Nazis, right? But then you could be invoked positively for you. Yeah. Better conditions, but that might also trigger investigations how this happened. Oh yeah, I'm gonna update Nightbot. Favors as consequences, and those consequences might go away when they're healed. We'll see. Rally is to sort of lift morale, and sort of rally is sort of like a if propaganda is sort of deceptive and sketchy, rally is sort of positive and it's like rapport. It's raising morale. It's getting people to USO. It's like it's positive. Rallies for people what propaganda is for reputation. Let's put it that way, right? So rally is right. So rally is to help people's morale and to get people. It's like rally, recruit. So I say rally, but rally to recruit and to raise morale. It's for people. Assault is to physically attack things with the guns. Propaganda is to sort of mess with people's reputations. I can imagine one morning everyone goes out to the city square, find the French flag on the city hall pole instead of the Nazi flag, a good morale booster. I'm heading out like right about now, but Volpez, you can't go because I'm singing a song. Security is physical security of your space, operational security. Intelligence is getting information and how much information you have. Mobility is moving from place to place, evading people seeing you. If people are sort of like either getting somewhere, evading patrols, perhaps. Allies are how big your personnel is, how many people are with you. It can be called a rap sheet. And then covert will be all of your sneaky things. I'm going to think about that a little bit, but I think we've got a lot in there, and I think it's good, and I think it's actually pretty new, and I'm excited to write this up and sort of tie it together a little bit. I'm probably going to want to not next week. Oh, I should tell you all. Next week, I'm streaming on Thursday next week, but not Friday or Saturday. But I will be streaming again after that, the week after that. Will I be doing a Friday stream? A Friday Fate stream? Maybe I'll need to. I will see. I might need to do another Friday Fate stream to sort of put this all together. So let's think about a Friday Fate stream in 2 weeks, in a fortnight, and see if we can consolidate this into a new system. And that's what we're gonna do. But I'm gonna go. However, first, for Volpez, I'm gonna sing "We're in the Money" as sung by Ginger Rogers from the film Gold Diggers of 1933 in Pig Latin, and that will be. Earway and hey, the anime. Earway and hey, the anime. Eve at gale at way of way at way at way xt ute at gale ang way. Earway and hey, the anime. E they I skays are ani say. Oh man di and pray uyare three you stay unway on rail. E whatever ni eat ray adley ansley, a of way ad bray ansley ute day. And when we see the end the order uklat the eye are in the eye. We're in the money, we're in the money. We've got a lot of what it takes to get along. Woo! Thanks, everybody. I am going to see you all tomorrow because tomorrow I'm streaming The Other Worlds, and then I'm gonna. If I do not see you tomorrow, Happy New Year, everyone. And I will probably see you tomorrow, and I'm gonna wish you all the happiness. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm really excited about. There are spots when I'm hearing a Hawaiian festival. I'm really liking how this is going. I'm gonna have to write things up and sort of finalize some skills and whatnot. And then I think we should probably do some kind of grand example, maybe in 2 weeks, to see how it goes. We'll try to work it out a little bit and see how these things work together. And that's it. I'm streaming on Saturday. I will see you on Saturday noon. And then next week, just on Thursday, that's in January. January is going to also give us Cthulhu Confidential on the 19th and the 26th. The 19th at least, maybe the 26th, with AJ Bolden, who works with Battletech. And also, I'm going to be starting this Witcher campaign sooner or later, either January or February, and we're going to be starting up some French Resistance as well. I mean, I've got to have some things going up. No, no worries, Caldrake. I want to make sure that this works and is clear, and the relationship. And I think once I write things down, it'll be helpful. And I've got a list of things. And I'm gonna relook at the list of skills and see if I want to give them different names and make sure that there's like a nice thing, and think about favors, and because I think those consequence tracks could be positive things, right? Like if you are doing a faction move against somebody that you like, or that you want to like you, the consequence would be that they like you, right? And then they have to sort of deal with that consequence. That them liking you may fade over time if they, fix that consequence. But right, you're sort of anyway. I should tell you all, I'm Trooper SJP, and this is the Academic Foxhole, and if you want to follow, please do. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But you can follow. It's over there. Or subscribe if you want to. Also, you can find me on Twitter at Academic Foxhole, and you can find me on Patreon at Academic Foxhole, where I'm sort of gathering funds to pay for, Cthulhu Confidential and for this French Resistance that I want to, get up and running all excellently. And you can find me on YouTube at Trooper SJP, where I have playlists of all the things that I've done, which includes Night Witches and some of the things I've done on the Dot Lot. So all those things are up there, and also all the shows here. So that's everything. Also, we have a Discord. Join us in the Discord. We'll talk about things. It'll be excellent. I'm gonna go eat some food. I'm gonna go have some tacos with carnitas, and it'll be excellent. So take care, everybody, and I will catch you on the flip side. And you all are the best, Foxhole. And still, I'm telling you, right here is the GURPS French Resistance book. I'm just saying. But we're gonna stick to fate. We're gonna stick to fate. Okay. And exceptional mustache. I just retrimmed my mustache, and I'm liking how it's working right now. But that's it. I'm gonna go eat some food. Take care of yourselves. I love you all. I appreciate you all talking to me about all of this stuff, and I also appreciate you all being ready for a game that will have will understand that not all Germans are Nazis, and not all Nazis are Germans, and that there might be Nazis all over the place in bad ways that might not all be Germans, and like the complicatedness of it, because I'm excited for a little bit of complicatedness. So let's do it. All right, everybody. See you tomorrow. If not, Happy New Year. Bye.